Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Clara Harris. Betrayal is one of the most emotionally devastating experiences a person can face, especially when it comes from someone they love. It can shatter relationships, destroy families, and even lead to loss of life. David Lynn Harris worked tirelessly for many years to become a respected orthodontist. His wife, Clara, also found success in the dental field as a well-known dentist. Both of them dedicated themselves to their studies and careers, allowing them to achieve their dreams. Together, the Harris family enjoyed a prosperous life filled with luxury and beautiful, including children. Something many people aspire to. David's journey began in Texas after graduating from high school. He enrolled in medical school with the ambition of becoming a doctor. He devoted all his free time to his studies, often declining invitations to social events and parties. After completing his degree, David chose to focus on dentistry and aimed to start his own practice. His career quickly took off. After he finished his education, David was known for his charisma and his ability to connect with patients, helping to calm them during their visits. Over time, he gained a strong reputation in the city. Clara Suarez was born in Colombia as the eldest of 4 children. Her family, while not wealthy, placed a high value on education and hard work. Teaching Clara the importance of striving for success, she was attractive and participated in beauty contests, even winning one. Clara studied dentistry at a prestigious university in Colombia, but she always dreamed of moving to the USA. She fulfilled this dream when she turned 20. By the mid-1980s, she had arrived in the States and enrolled in college. Clara moved to Texas with the intention of staying only temporarily, but she eventually chose to make it her home. After finishing her studies, she began to pursue her career, with the goal of entering private practice from the beginning. However, she faced challenges due to her lack of experience at that time. When she met David, they discovered they had many shared interests, making it feel as though they were destined to be together. David mentored her, initially in her role as a nurse, and later, as he expanded his private practice. Clara trained to become an orthodontist. Both were ambitious, attractive, and driven, and their families often expressed how fortunate they were to have found one another. Just a year after their meeting, David and Clara decided to marry. They got married on Valentine's Day in 1992, which held special significance for them before meeting Clara. David had been divorced and had a daughter named Lindsay who lived with him. They worked on building their relationship, spending plenty of time together due to their common interests. From that period on, their career successes gained momentum. In the 1990s, their dental clinic grew, requiring more specialists to join their practice. The family business became very profitable, and they worked in a prestigious area near Houston, specifically in a wealthy community called Nassau Bay, where the Harrises lived. They enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle with a dream home and a collection of high-end cars. They had everything they needed for a comfortable life. Clara had always dreamed of having children, but she faced challenges with her reproductive health and struggled to conceive for several years. They sought help at a family planning medical center, which eventually led to Clara becoming pregnant and giving birth to twin boys, whom they named Brian and Bradley. Their marriage appeared to be perfect beneath the surface of happiness. Betrayal was brewing during this time. David was secretly involved with Gail Bridges, a single mother of 3. She captivated David while Clara was on maternity leave, focusing on their family before an assistant position opened up at Dr. Harris's clinic to help manage the workload. Gail, who had divorced several years earlier, was seeking work and found a job listing for the Harris Clinic. In 2001, Gail applied for the dental clinic assistant position and attended the interview. Her previous experience made her a strong candidate. David was immediately drawn to her. She was friendly and outgoing. Meanwhile, Clara was dealing with typical post-pregnancy challenges. She was sleep-deprived and struggling with her weight. Her recovery was slow, and David was growing impatient. He felt neglected as Clara was entirely focused on the twins, which he confided in a few friends. In contrast, Gail demonstrated her interest in both the job and in developing a closer relationship with David. Leading them from a professional connection to friendship, David was becoming increasingly attracted to Gail. He kept this hidden from his colleagues, who knew his wife, because he didn't want to stir up any trouble. However, the temptation grew stronger, and by the end of the year, he invited Gail to lunch at a local restaurant, which she accepted. After that meeting, they began a secret relationship. David didn't take many precautions to keep it hidden. He regularly returned to the same restaurant with Gail, where he had previously dined with his wife. The Harrises were familiar faces at the restaurant, so it didn't take long for people to notice the change in his company. About 4 months later, in early July 2002, other employees at the dental center discovered the affair when they caught David and Gail being intimate at work. David asked them not to tell anyone, but it didn't matter. He had been communicating with Gail on his home computer, and a few days later, Clara discovered their conversations and uncovered her husband's infidelity. She chose not to accuse her husband or create a scandal because she wanted to save their marriage. So she felt it was important to communicate openly. She shared with her friends that she felt betrayed, but also recognized that she had some responsibility in the situation. David, busy with the children, seemed willing to repair their relationship, insisting that his involvement with Gail was limited to kisses. The Harrises decided to reboot their family by going on vacation to Jamaica, where they had an honest conversation and agreed to work through their issues together, including ending David's relationship with Gail. Clara also expressed a desire to let go of this new employee. This trip appeared to genuinely strengthen their marriage. David began spending more time with Clara and the children, promised to dismiss Gail once he found a replacement, and even showed Clara job listings for potential hires, despite claiming to his lover that their affair had been discovered. David had been secretly meeting with Gail. He expressed to a few close colleagues that he was struggling to choose between his family and Gail. David loved Gail, but didn't want to jeopardize his marriage. He still cared for his wife and didn't want to disrupt their lives or fight over assets and custody. Most people advised him to return to his family and move on from the affair. Though he considered this advice, he never shared his uncertainties with Clara. Everyone assumed David would manage the situation on his own. On the morning of July 17, 2002, Clara had a simple conversation with her husband, David. She asked him if he loved her, and he hesitated for a moment, which made her suspicious. His hesitation stemmed from his paranoia. He feared she had asked that question because she knew about his affair. This brief pause only heightened her suspicion, leading to a tense moment when Clara demanded an explanation. That evening, David confessed to Clara about his affair, admitting that he couldn't end his relationship with Gail. He had been seeing his mistress 3 times a week. Clara was devastated, and by the next day, she informed Gail about Gail's impending dismissal from their lives. David did not resist this decision. In the following days, Clara called Gail multiple times, accusing her of meddling in their family and ruining their marriage. Despite this, Clara did not want to end her marriage. She asked David what changes she could make to stop him from being attracted to other women. He honestly told her that he felt neglected because she had been focusing solely on their children. The twins were 3 years old, and he hoped that by now, Clara would have moved past the challenges of pregnancy. Additionally, he was unhappy with the changes in her appearance after giving birth. By the end of their dinner at the restaurant, Clara declared that she was willing to make changes to address David's concerns. She wanted to be the ideal wife and mother, so she decided to forgive him and fight for their happiness. In the weeks that followed, Clara made significant changes to her appearance. She adopted a healthy diet, hired a personal trainer, and began going to the gym, tanning salon, and cosmetologist. She styled her hair and did her nails daily, even planning several plastic surgeries. David noticed her efforts and was pleased. He vowed to end his relationship with his mistress, Gail, and mentioned that he would take Gail out to dinner to officially end things. Although he could have called her to break up, David insisted on meeting face to face. Believing that the manner of the breakup was important, they scheduled the meeting for the evening of July 24, 2002. Meanwhile, Clara struggled with trusting her unfaithful husband and decided to hire a private detective to keep tabs on him. She arranged for a week of surveillance, starting 3 days before the dinner with Gail. After the first 2 days, there seemed to be no unusual activity. Gail did not appear at the Harris private clinic after work, and it seemed that David had indeed ended the affair. As he spoke about the separation honestly, the long-awaited evening for the breakup of the love triangle finally arrived on that day. Clara took David's stepdaughter, Lindsay, shopping. Recently, Clara had been buying a new, brighter wardrobe to catch her husband's attention, constantly adding to it during their shopping trip. Lindsay noticed nothing unusual. Clara had chosen this time intentionally. On their way back from the store, they would pass by the restaurant where her husband was dining with his mistress. Clara intended to see with her own eyes how her rival would be left defeated, to her surprise. After driving around the parking lot several times, Clara couldn't find her husband's car, which made her suspicious. She then went to Gail's house, but neither Gail's nor David's car was there. Frustrated, Clara approached the private detective to find out the truth. The detective confirmed that her husband was not at the restaurant, but he couldn't disclose David's location. He promised to provide photographs and video recordings later. However, he did confirm that David was with his mistress at that moment, in a fit of rage. Clara demanded the exact address. The detective explained that agency rules prohibited him from revealing the real-time whereabouts of the people being followed, as it could lead to unpredictable and potentially dangerous situations fueled by passion and jealousy. Clara insisted and called his boss several times, demanding the exact information for which she had paid. She felt increasingly frustrated. Eventually, she convinced an agency employee to reveal that they had tracked Gail and David to a hotel where they were together. However, the employee refused to share the hotel's name and address. Clara couldn't obtain that information, but she believed she knew her husband well enough to guess where he might be. She thought he would only go to one specific hotel, Nassau Bay Hilton, the same place where they had their wedding reception 10 years ago. When she arrived at the hotel, she immediately realized she was right. Her husband's car was parked outside. David had taken precautions to hide their affair. He paid in cash and booked the room under a false name. Still, it was clear that the two lovers were inside. Clara parked her car and noticed Gail's vehicle next to David's. Furious, she stormed into the hotel, and Lindsay, not wanting to stay in the car, followed her stepmother inside. At the front desk, Clara inquired about a room reserved under David or Gail's name, but neither was listed. Lindsay knew about her father's infidelity and felt anger towards him. She wanted to verify her stepmother's suspicions. Clara was distraught. She sensed something was going on, but couldn't catch them in the act. Trying to calm down, they stayed in the lobby, checked the restrooms, and sat down, unsure how long they would have to wait. Lindsay decided to speed things up. She called her father, telling him that Brian and Brattle had a high fever and asking him to return quickly. He assured her he would be back soon. Their wait didn't last long. A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened, revealing David and Gail. Walking arm in arm and smiling as they chatted, they headed toward the exit. Clearly planning to go home, Clara and Lindsay were enraged and rushed at Gail. Clara attacked her, ripping her clothes and hitting her face with her hand and handbag. Lindsay yelled that she hated Gail and also tried to strike Gail. Hotel staff intervened, but the women were too caught up in their anger to be separated. Clara continued her assault on her husband's mistress. One of the employees witnessed David grabbing his wife and pushing her aside to protect Gail with his body. This action only fueled his wife's anger, as it made it clear he was not on her side in the conflict. Eventually, David managed to hold his wife back while hotel staff helped Gail reach her car, where she also tried to calm herself. At that moment, Clara experienced a breakdown. She screamed in rage, Venting her anger at David, Lindsay attempted to soothe her, but was also furious. Shocked by her father's betrayal throughout this, David faced harsh criticism from his wife and daughter, wanting to keep the peace until his mistress departed. But both women hurried out and got into Clara's car. Suddenly, Clara looked up and saw David standing next to Gail's car. Speaking to Gail just before she was about to leave, Clara described the moment as though a red veil had come down over her vision. In a fit of fury, she slammed the gas pedal and sped toward her husband's mistress's car, crashing into it and causing it to spin several meters across the parking lot. Lindsay, who was in the car with her, yelled desperately in an attempt to stop her, but Clara seemed completely unaware of her surroundings. She turned the steering wheel with resentful eyes. As if she had no idea what was going on, Clara finally came to a halt, and Lindsay quickly got out of the car. Witnesses reported that she ran to the driver's side and struck Clara in the face. Afterwards, she fell to the ground next to her father and started crying uncontrollably while waiting for the ambulance. She begged her father to breathe. Clutching his bloodied hands, the ambulance arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. The paramedics declared David Harris dead. Clara took advantage of the time before the police arrived and fled the scene. However, she was found and arrested later that same night. She claimed that she did not intend to kill her husband. She was simply overwhelmed with rage and wanted to punish him for being unfaithful. Meanwhile, forensic investigators were already examining the crime scene, and the authorities received unexpected help. A private detective agency, hired by Clara to follow her husband, had been monitoring the entire incident outside the hotel. They recorded the attack from beginning to end, and the footage was given to the police. The videos contradicted Clara's account, showing her driving around the parking lot 3 times, although David was not clearly visible in the footage. It was assumed that she hit him each time. After the first impact, he was left unconscious. The autopsy revealed only one mark of impact on David's body. Leading to a dispute in court, Clara became known as the Mercedes Killer. The story quickly gained popularity, attracting significant public and media attention. News of the incident spread across all channels overnight. The nature of the attack and the scandal surrounding it intrigued viewers, especially since it involved a wealthy couple running a successful business. Additionally, David's 17-year-old daughter became embroiled in the situation. Clara's case went to court in February 2003. The prosecution argued that hiring a private detective was not just a way to learn about her husband, but part of a carefully planned murder. They claimed that out of jealousy, Clara sought revenge. They pointed out that she had enough time to calm down after the argument in the hotel lobby, which meant her later attack was premeditated. She clearly intended to harm him without giving him a chance to escape. Among the evidence was a recording of a phone call where Clara learned that hired detectives had recorded the crime on film. She spoke in a very calm and composed manner, showing no signs of remorse or regret over her husband's death. During this conversation, she did not even refer to what happened as an accident. From the very beginning, Clara referred to it as murder. She spoke coldly about her husband being dead and the circumstances surrounding it, asking questions dryly, apparently just trying to understand how to build a defense strategy in court. Lindsay, David's stepdaughter, testified against Clara in court. Supporting the prosecution's claims, Lindsay stated that she had been in the car the entire time and had screamed and cried, trying to convince Clara to stop. Despite this, Clara was still extremely angry and committed an act of violence. The defense lawyers argued that Clara's actions were the result of an unintentional outburst caused. They presented her as a heartbroken woman who was not fully responsible for her actions due to emotional trauma. Several witnesses testified in her defense, describing her as a dedicated career woman and a loving mother and wife who worked hard to maintain her family's well-being with David. Even after discovering her husband's affair with the secretary, she remained wise and patient, attempting to save their marriage. In the weeks before the crime, Clara worked hard to lose weight, underwent beauty treatments, and prepared for breast augmentation surgery, all for her husband. Despite his infidelity, she acted like a dedicated wife by cooking his favorite meals and becoming more active in their intimate life. Clara described feeling devastated by her husband's betrayal, experiencing anger and distrust. Clara then revised her story based on her lawyer's advice. She now claimed that her intention was to hit Gail's car and that David became an unintended victim when she lost control while accelerating. Clara cried openly in public, displaying deep sorrow. However, despite her emotional display and her attorney's efforts, she was found guilty of second-degree murder. The conviction carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, which angered David's family. Texas law classified her actions as second-degree murder, allowing for this lengthy sentence despite the minimum being just 2 years. The court also imposed a $10 fine to be paid to the victim's family. The lawyers articulated Clara's emotional distress so effectively that some jurors began to doubt her guilt. All those concerned about the process split into two camps. Some believed the sentence was excessively severe, while others argued that the punishment was far too light. This was particularly poignant as the day the verdict was handed down coincided with the 11th anniversary of David and Clara's wedding. All of this only heightened the emotional tension. Clara participated in several interviews where she openly shared her feelings about the traumatic events she had experienced. She felt confused and overwhelmed by the situation. Realizing that she now faced much bigger challenges, Clara recognized that she could have chosen to file for divorce and take everything her husband valued, which would have been a fitting act of revenge. Now, her primary concern was the well-being of her twins and David's 17-year-old stepdaughter. Custody of the children was granted to Clara's close friends, who facilitated visits between the children and their mother in prison after serving 15 years. Clara was granted parole and released on May 11, 2018. Following her release, she appeared on various talk shows, displaying a cheerful demeanor at 60 years old. She was eager to begin a new chapter in her life. While in prison, Clara devoted her time to translating books into Braille for visually impaired individuals. After her release, she spoke candidly about her experiences and the struggles she faced in coping with the aftermath of her actions. Some speculated that her reflective statements were merely a means of gaining publicity, considering how soon they came after her release. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Gretchen Harrington. Gretchen Harrington was born on June 13, 1967, in Pennsylvania. She was the youngest of 3 daughters, but her family didn't stay in Pennsylvania for long. Soon after her birth, they moved to the small town of Bumo, where her father, a pastor, obtained a job at the local church. Gretchen immediately loved this new town. She spends a lot of time outdoors with her sisters and her new friends. The town was incredibly safe, giving parents felt comfortable letting their children play outside until nightfall. The town of Bumo seemed to be the ideal place for kids from a religious family to grow up. As a result, Gretchen spent a lot of time at her father's church and excelled in Sunday school, consistently earning top grades. On August 15, 1975, Gretchen's mother and newborn sister were set to return home from the hospital. 8-year-old Gretchen was excited to meet her new sibling. However, her father reminded her not to miss Sunday school, considering her perfect attendance record and high grades. Although Gretchen was hesitant, but she decided to attend church, taking her Bible along. Normally, she would have walked to church with her older sisters, but on that morning, they stayed home. The church was only a short distance away, less than a mile, so she didn't feel afraid to walk alone. The Sunday school lessons were divided into 2 sessions. First, the children gathered at Trinity Church, and after about an hour and a half, some of them, including Gretchen, were to head to her father's church. However, when the kids arrived at the second church at 11:30 a.m., Gretchen's father noticed that his daughter was missing. Thinking that Gretchen might have stayed at the first church, her father called Trinity Church to check. David's wife, a Sunday school teacher and pastor's spouse, answered the call. She reported that Gretchen was not there. She immediately informed her husband, David, about the situation. He was surprised to hear this, as Gretchen had not been in attendance at his Sunday school class that morning. Growing increasingly worried, Gretchen's father asked David to contact the police while he began searching for his daughter. He drove along the route between the two churches, checked nearby streets, and reached out to the parents of Gretchen's friends, but she was nowhere to be found. Her friends were all either at church or at home, and Gretchen's best friend, who was David's daughter, hadn't seen her all day. The police quickly launched a search for Gretchen. As people learned about her disappearance, they rallied together to help find her. Since Gretchen's father is a well-respected local pastor, hundreds of volunteers joined the search, many of whom knew and admired him. The volunteers and police scoured the town and surrounding areas, including wooded regions and the riverbank. A police helicopter even assisted the search from above. Despite the extensive search continuing late into the night, but they still couldn't find Gretchen. The search for Gretchen continued to grow the following day, with even more volunteers joining them. To aid in the search, the police created and distributed flyers displaying Gretchen's photo and details about her disappearance to motorists and along roads. Despite these extensive efforts, the police were unable to uncover any leads or determine what had happened to Gretchen. As the days went by with no new information, Gretchen's disappearance remained a mystery, deeply impacting the town. In the past, it was common for children to have the freedom to roam the streets without adult supervision. They would often spend hours exploring the woods and swimming in the nearby river with no one watching over them, and their parents rarely worried. However, the recent disappearance of Gretchen changed everything, which sparked widespread fear and anxiety among residents. As people tried to make sense of what had happened, various theories emerged. Some speculated that Gretchen might have left home voluntarily, while others believed she may have drowned while swimming in the river. The most disturbing theory, however, was that she had been kidnapped. As a result, parents became extremely cautious, no longer letting their children out without supervision. One mother even went as far as cutting her daughter's hair short to disguise her as a boy. Overnight, the once peaceful town turned into a place of uncertainty and fear. Police have also questioned anyone who may be involved in Gretchen's disappearance. They gathered several new leads from conversations with witnesses. One witness reported seeing a girl who resembled Gretchen near the church that morning, approached by a green station wagon. However, the witness did not see what happened next. Another person shared a similar story, but described a white Cadillac approaching the girl. The police investigated these leads by identifying and checking the owners of matching vehicles in the area. Unfortunately, this did not yield any results. 4 days later, a resident of Westchester, a nearby town, contacted the police after finding children's shorts that matched the description of Gretchen's clothing. Investigators showed the shorts to Gretchen's mother, but she confirmed they did not belong to her daughter. From then on, there was still no progress in the case. The search operation was eventually suspended, and the focus shifted to the investigation. The police continued to interview witnesses and follow up on any available leads. However, as time passed, the chances of finding Gretchen alive grew increasingly slim. On October 14th, a jogger in a national park, approximately 20 minutes from Bumo, noticed something strange in the bushes. Initially, he wasn't sure what it was, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a human body. The jogger immediately reported the things to the park rangers, who then alerted the police. Upon investigation, the authorities determined that the remains belonged to a child. However, identifying the child to be extremely difficult due to the advanced state of decomposition. Investigators initially suspected it might be Gretchen, so they showed her parents pictures of the clothes found next to the remains. These clothes had been carefully folded. Gretchen's mother confirmed the clothes found belonged to her daughter, as she had made them herself. Forensic experts further the identification by matching the remains to Gretchen's dental records. The cause of death was determined to be multiple severe blows to the head, and the case was reclassified as a homicide. The body was so decomposed that investigators were unable to determine any further details about the circumstances surrounding her death, including whether she had been sexually assaulted. Additionally, DNA analysis technology was not available at the time, 1975, leaving investigators without any DNA clues to pursue. The town was shaken by the news of Gretchen's murder, leading to an influx of tips for the police. As concerns about a violent offender still on the loose grew, citizens urged authorities to swiftly bring the perpetrator to justice. As the investigation continued, authorities received numerous tips about suspicious individuals seen in the park where Gretchen's body was found. Unfortunately, these leads did not aid in the case. Investigators also thoroughly vetted nearby residents with a history of violent crimes, but this approach yielded no results. Several months after the body was discovered, the case came to a standstill with no new developments. In subsequent years, detectives would periodically reopen the case, thoroughly reviewing existing leads and tips, but to no avail. This was largely due to a lack of evidence. Even with advancements in DNA analysis, the police found no concrete leads. No foreign DNA was found on Gretchen's body or her clothes, leaving the case unsolved for decades. The investigation was periodically mentioned in the media, but public interest waned. Following the crime, parents in the town became highly cautious and protective of their children due to fearing another attack. This collective fear lingered for years, changing the lives of Brawl's children. Months later, a crucial piece of information came to light. A woman contacted the authorities to share her account and met with the lead detective to tell her story. At the time of Gretchen's murder, the woman was 10 years old and lived in Havertone, close to Gretchen's home. She was friends with Gretchen and her older sisters, as well as other kids in the neighborhood. The woman often slept over at her friends' houses. One incident, in particular, stood out and was pivotal to her coming forward. While sleeping over at a friend's house, the woman woke up in the middle of the night to find the friend's father touching her. She then saw him quickly leave the room and was too afraid to tell anyone. However, the same thing happened again the following night. The next morning, she confided in one of her friends, who surprisingly revealed that this was a common occurrence. The friend's father would often come into their room at night. The woman immediately reported this to her parents when she returned home. But instead of contacting the police, they simply forbade her from visiting the friend's house again. This disturbing incident occurred just 1 week before Gretchen's disappearance. The woman shared a crucial piece of information with the authorities: the name of the man she suspected, David Zandstra, a pastor who taught at the Sunday school. However, her account didn't end there. She also shared a disturbing incident involving one of her friends, which happened a month after Gretchen's disappearance. This friend was approached by a man who tried to kidnap, but her friend managed to avoid the situation by refusing to get into his car. The man who made the attempt was none other than David Zandstra. To support her claim, the woman provided detectives with her personal diary from that period. In the diary entry dated September 15, 1975, she recorded a conversation with her friend, who had begged her to keep a secret due to concerns that David might cause her harm. With this new information, the police reopened the case. Upon re-examining the original case materials, detectives uncovered several suspicious details that indirectly pointed to David's involvement. Notably, it was he who initially reported Gretchen's disappearance to the authorities. The pastor David gave investigators a precise description of Gretchen's clothing: dark blue zip-up shorts with front studs and pockets. He also mentioned a white top and braided hair. However, David claimed that he had not seen Gretchen that day. This raised a question: how did he know what she wore, especially since his description's claim was later confirmed to be true after Candy's body was found, as she was wearing the exact same clothes he described. Further investigation revealed that the Sunday school classes were delayed by 50 minutes due to the pastor David's late arrival. This delay would have given him enough time to abduct Gretchen, kill her, dispose of her body in the park, and return to the church to begin teaching. According to David's initial statement, he drove some children in his van to Candy's father's church after the classes, and only became aware of Candy's absence when her father said it out to him. A significant detail in the case was that David, his wife, and their 3 children relocated to another state just months after Gretchen's disappearance. Notably, David owned multiple vehicles, including a green station wagon that drew police attention. A witness had previously reported seeing a similar vehicle near the church on the day Gretchen vanished. Given these clues, detectives decided to interrogate David. At 83 years old and residing in Georgia, David agreed to speak with detectives at the local police station on July 17, 2023. When David realized the detectives suspected him of murder, he initially responded with denial, asking what evidence they had against him. However, the detectives revealed 2 key pieces of evidence: a woman's testimony about an incident at his house, and allegations of him molesting his own daughters. David's demeanor drastically changed. As he realized his dark past was exposed, he stopped denying the accusations and, after 48 years of silence, he began to speak about the murder. According to David's account, on a Sunday morning, he drove his green American motor station wagon to Gretchen's father's church. There, he saw Gretchen walking outside and offered to give her a ride. Gretchen accepted, likely because their families were friends, and she was also on her way to his Sunday school classes. However, instead of taking Gretchen to the church, David drove her to a secluded park area. He ordered her to undress, but she refused and she asked to be taken home. David then hit Gretchen repeatedly on the head, knocking her unconscious. After Gretchen lost consciousness, David removed her clothes and assaulted her. He then drove her to another park and checked for a pulse, but found none. Believing she was dead, he carried her body into the bushes and covered it with branches. David then returned to the church to teach his Sunday school class. After he confessed, the police arrested him to Gretchen's murder and had him extradited to Pennsylvania to face trial. His arrest sparked a wider and more thorough investigation. Detectives suspected that David had assaulted multiple girls, and they strongly believed there were additional victims. The fact that he had been a pastor in various cities and states for decades led as it suggested he may have committed many more crimes. Because David was a pastor, respected by everyone, he initially was not suspected. However, with the truth finally exposed, detectives collected his DNA sample and began comparing it to evidence in unsolved cases. They also investigated unsolved disappearances of girls in cities where he had been employed. Investigators quickly identified a case similar to that of Gretchen. In 1991, 4-year-old Amanda Campbell from California, she vanished from her home in a quiet neighborhood without leaving any clues. Notably, at the time of Amanda's disappearance, David was a pastor in that same neighborhood. Although there is currently no evidence linking him to the crime, police have identified similarities between the 2 cases, suggesting he could be a suspect. David Zanstra, now 83, is being held in a jail in Cobb County, Georgia. He was denied bail and denied extradition to Pennsylvania, despite he filing an extradition request. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Alex Murdaugh. Richard Alexander Alex Murdaugh, born May 27, 1968, is a member of a prominent and well-connected South Carolina legal family. The Murdaugh family has dominated the region's legal system for more than 100 years, with 3 consecutive generations serving as district attorneys of the 14th Judicial District from 1920 to 2006. However, that dynasty has come to an abrupt end for Alex. The Murdaugh family has been building the foundation for their success for decades. Specifically, when Alex's great-grandfather, Randolph Murdaugh Sr., founded the law firm Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Elaf, and Dietrich, PMPD, they became an influential family in the area. Their strong presence led to the Hampton area being referred to as Murdaugh County. Alex sought to follow in his family's footsteps and pursued a law degree at the University of North Carolina. While in college, he met and married High's wife, Margaret Maggie Brandstetter, in 1993. They began seeing each other in 1991 and were married on August 14, 1993, at the Second Presbyterian Church in South Carolina. Alex, a personal injury attorney who works at the family firm PMPD, seeks to continue the family legacy. Unlike previous generations of Murdaughs, however, Alex abused the power and influence of the family business to cover up financial crimes, theft, and even suspected murder. His nefarious dealings lasted for more than a decade until his youngest son, Paul, died in a boating accident. Paul's boating accident was the latest in a string of suspicious deaths linked to the Murdaugh family. Many believe that these deaths were not actual accidents but part of a larger cover-up. Given the history and resources of the Murdaugh family, this theory seems plausible, especially considering how they handled Mallory Beach's death. Paul Murdaugh sailed his family boat to a party on Pucas Island on February 23, 2019. Having just graduated from high school, Paul and his girlfriend Morgan Dowdy, along with Anthony Cook and Mallory Beach, wanted to have a party and a night of unsupervised fun. They planned to start the night with a house party and oyster roast on the island. However, parties can't start without alcohol, so Paul bought some beer and hard liquor using his brother's ID. They left the Murdaugh River house at 7 p.m. By midnight, they were ready to continue their fun, so Paul decided to steer the boat to downtown Beaufort. There, he and Connor, a teenager, also joined the boat party, had 2 rounds of drinks around 1 a.m. On the way back to the boat, Paul and Connor were caught on a surveillance camera. At this point, Paul had been drinking heavily, and according to other passengers, he began to act strangely around 1:15 a.m. As they sailed, the situation became more complicated. The group started to disagree with Paul as he steered the boat in a disoriented manner and acted as if he were drunk. Mallory recalled that Anthony asked Paul to take him to a nearby rock to get off, but Paul refused. Morgan later commented that Paul took his hands off the wheel several times to argue with her, which made Mallory very nervous. GPS data from the boat's Garmin device indicated a period of acceleration. Paul, however, denied pushing the boat forward, but he was at the wheel at 2:20 a.m. when the boat hit the bridge, throwing Mallory into the water. The other teens were also in danger. Connor suffered a broken jaw and Morgan sustained a serious hand injury. Connor called 911 and help arrived immediately. When Deputy Beaufort arrived, the teens were in a state of chaos. The first thing he noticed was that Anthony was in distress. He reported that when he saw Paul smiling, Anthony actually tried to run past him to get to Paul. Police reported finding blood in the main cabin of the boat and a large crack in the hull from the collision. All of the teens were intoxicated and were taken to the hospital for treatment, except for Anthony. Everyone agreed to treatment except Paul, who was highly agitated and had a blood alcohol level of 0.243, while above the legal limit. Paul's father, Alex, was present that night, going from room to room trying to calm everyone down and control the situation. After 8 days of searching, Mallory's body was finally found. The autopsy revealed that she died from blunt force trauma to the head and subsequent drowning. Several witnesses, including Paul's girlfriend Morgan, testified that Paul was speeding in the boat that night. However, Paul was neither arrested nor charged. This led to speculation that Alex may have intervened in the legal process to help his son escape punishment. In March 2019, the Murdaugh family was sued for wrongful death. Mallory's family alleged that Paul's mother, Maggie, knew her son was intoxicated while the group was boating. Additionally, they claimed that his brother Buster provided the paperwork necessary for the group to purchase alcohol. It was not until April 18, 2019, on Mallory's 20th birthday, that Paul was charged with 3 felony counts of operating a boat while intoxicated, resulting in her death and the serious injury of 2 other passengers. Paul pleaded not guilty and was released on $50,000 bail. Unfortunately, Paul's trial date never arrived. He died before the case could proceed. Another death that appears to be linked to the Murdaugh family is that of Stephen Smith, an openly gay teenager whose body was found on July 8, 2015, lying in the middle of a road in Hampton County, South Carolina. The cause of death for the victim was severe head trauma. The incident was initially ruled a hit-and-run accident, and no suspects were arrested. However, the victim's mother believes her son was murdered in a hate crime. Stephen had been classmates with Buster Murdaugh in high school. In addition to their friendship, there were rumors that the two had been romantically involved. Some have suggested Buster was involved in Stephen's death and that the story of him running away after the accident was a lie. On March 22, 2023, the South Carolina Department of Law Enforcement reopened the case, confirming that his death was indeed a homicide, although no suspects have been named. Another case involves the Murdaugh family. Gloria was the longtime housekeeper for Alex's family. On February 2, 2018, she suffered a serious head injury after falling down the stairs at the Moselle mansion. She later died on February 26, 2018, from complications related to the accident. Alex claimed that his dogs greeted Gloria at the top of the stairs, causing her to trip and fall backward, leading to the accident. It is unclear why no autopsy was performed to confirm Alex's version of events. Gloria's death certificate listed the cause of death as natural causes. Gloria's sons sued for their mother's untimely death in 2018 and were awarded a $1.4 million insurance settlement in 2020. However, the money and reached them. Alex allegedly plotted to collect the insurance money, approached Gloria's sons, and encouraged them to sue him, even introducing them to an attorney named Corey Fleming. Corey Fleming was a longtime friend and associate of one of Alex's sons. They conspired to defraud and steal the Gloria family's insurance money. They wired the insurance money into Alex's bank account without notifying the Gloria family that they had received the money. Gloria's sons then filed a new civil lawsuit on September 15, 2021, against Alex. On the same day, state investigators opened a criminal investigation into Gloria's death. Investigators are trying to determine whether there is any criminal liability in her death. Based on a request from the Hampton County coroner, they found that Gloria's cause of death was not due to natural causes. After Gloria's family gave permission, authorities conducted an autopsy to investigate further. In late September 2021, Alex faced multiple charges related to financial misconduct and embezzlement. Before the Gloria family sued, Alex had been involved in fraud and embezzlement for nearly a decade. Alex was accused of participating in a money laundering and painkiller abuse scheme that lasted from October 2013 to September 2021, along with his distant cousin and co-defendant, Curtis Smith. On September 4, 2021, Alex and Curtis conspired to commit murder. Alex provided Curtis with a gun and instructed him to shoot Alex himself, intending for Buster, Alex's only surviving son, to collect Alex's life insurance policy after his death. Curtis went to the location Alex had prepared, where Alex pretended that his tire was flat, and Curtis shot him as instructed. However, the bullet only caused minor injuries to Alex, who called 911 himself. When local law enforcement inspected the scene, they recognized signs of foul play but were unable to prove it. A few days later, Alex admitted that he had conspired with Curtis and staged the shooting. His lawyer informed him that he was mentally unstable and that malicious elements were taking advantage of the situation. They claimed that Alex wanted to commit suicide so that Buster could collect a $10 million life insurance policy. Alex turned himself in when he learned a warrant had been issued for his arrest and was charged with fraud and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. He filed a police report just 2 days after the incident. Alex announced that he would resign from his family law firm and enter rehab for treatment. After his release, he was quoted as saying that he had made many decisions that he regretted. In September 2021, the South Carolina Supreme Court indefinitely suspended Alex's law license. Further investigation into Alex's life revealed that he had committed several financial crimes, including tax evasion, embezzlement, and misappropriation of funds from clients and the law firm where he worked. Alex was released from rehab on October 14, 2021, and was later arrested. He was charged with 2 felony counts of fraud. The arrest was based on an investigation into the misappropriation of investment funds related to the unnatural death of Gloria. This time, Alex was denied bail. This was just the beginning of Alex's legal troubles. On November 18, 2021, he was indicted on 27 counts of financial fraud, including allegedly stealing money from clients, other lawyers, and the family of his deceased housekeeper. On December 9, 2021, an additional 21 charges were filed against Alex, bringing the total to 48. The charges include 1 count of counterfeiting, 4 counts of money laundering, 7 counts of computer crime, and 9 counts of breach of trust with intent to commit fraud, among others. It is estimated that Alex stole more than $6.2 million from his victims. The investigation into Alex's business dealings has been ongoing, with new charges being filed against him. By June 2022, the total number of charges against him had reached 81. On July 13, 2022, when Alex was officially disbarred, he faced a total of 84 criminal charges and 11 lawsuits. Mallory Beach's mother, whose daughter was a 19-year-old victim, was one of several people who filed lawsuits related to the estate of Margaret and Paul Murdaugh. The prominent attorney's alleged financial misconduct has raised questions about his character and conduct. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, has decided to review what they know and have accepted as the truth about the double murder and further investigate the financial crimes against Alex. Investigators realized that this was a troubled marriage. Alex and Maggie were experiencing marital difficulties. Maggie was living separately at the family home on Edisto Island, which is a little over an hour's drive from the Moselle estate. Maggie's sister, Marion Branstetter, told police that Maggie had no plans to see her husband on the night of the murder. Alex contacted Maggie on that fateful day, asking her to come to the family hunting lodge. He wanted her to accompany him to visit his father, who was dying and could pass away at any moment. Initially, she did not want to go but texted a friend, saying that her husband's behavior was suspicious and that he might be planning something. She suggested they meet at the hospital instead of following her husband. Eventually, she agreed to drive to the Moselle estate before going to the hospital to visit her ailing father-in-law. However, she was murdered before she had a chance to see him. Maggie and her youngest son were murdered at the Murdaugh family's 1,700-acre farm in Moselle, which included a house, a doghouse, a cabin, and wetlands. Maggie and Paul were shot multiple times near the doghouse. Paul was shot twice with a shotgun, while Maggie was shot 5 times with a different weapon, which ballistics analysis showed was a .300 caliber round from an AR-style rifle. Alex stated that he had taken a long nap that day before visiting his dad, who suffered from dementia. He claimed he was gone for about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and when he returned, he found his wife and youngest son dead on the floor near the doghouse. Law enforcement reviewed Alex's schedule that night, and he admitted that he had taken a nap on the couch before leaving for his dad. In this case, police investigated the motive behind prominent attorney Alex's murder of his family. Investigators found a key clue. Weeks before the killings, a grand jury subpoenaed Alex's finances for an probe related to his son Paul's 2019 fatal boating accident. This may have been the primary motive. Alex is worried that all his financial wrongdoing will be exposed following a hearing scheduled for June 10, 2021. Furthermore, his law firm has uncovered his misuse of company funds. Gene Singer, the company's chief financial officer at the time, confronted Alex about the missing money on June 7, 2021, the day of the murder. State authorities say the financial pressure used Alex to panic and fear that his world was falling apart. Once a prominent lawyer in South Carolina, Alex devised a bold plan to hide his financial crimes. However, these acts are gradually becoming public and drawing sympathy away from him. On July 14, 2022, 13 months after the shooting that killed his wife and son, Alex was charged with their murders. His trial commenced with charges of murder and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. The prosecution claimed that Alex used both a handgun and an AR rifle to shoot and kill his wife and son at close range. The murder weapons were never found. Alex's defense team argued that the shootings were carried out by 2 different shooters based on the weapons used. An expert witness for the defense stated that the height of the shooters could have ranged between 5 feet 2 inches and 5 feet 4 inches, while Alex stands at 6 feet 4 inches tall, which disqualified him as a suspect. Prosecutors pointed to the gunshot evidence as indicating Alex's involvement. However, the expert witness, when questioned, acknowledged that other factors besides height could have influenced the trajectory of the bullets. The ballistics investigation determined that Maggie was shot with .300 blackout rounds from an AR-style rifle. Investigators found a box of these bullets on the Murdaugh family property. The state's attorney argued that Alex killed his wife and son to gain sympathy and avoid responsibility for his financial crimes. However, Alex's attorney disputed this theory, claiming that there was no reason for Alex to divert the financial investigation away from himself and instead put himself at the center of a murder investigation. During the trial, evidence emerged suggesting that Alex was not the one who directly committed the murders that the South Carolina Department of Law Enforcement, SLED, was investigating. Alex's attorney, Dick Harputlian, argued that he had an alibi for the night of the murders and had an motive to kill Maggie and their youngest son, Paul. He portrayed Alex and Maggie's marriage as one of everlasting love. However, prosecutors presented 2 videos of Alex from the night of the murders, taken hours apart. One was from Paul's Snapchat, and the other was from a law enforcement officer's body camera at the scene of the crime. The Snapchat footage was taken about an hour before the murders. When compared to what Alex was wearing after the incident, there was a clear discrepancy in clothing. In the Snapchat video, Alex was dressed in a blue shirt, which was different from the one he wore that was captured on the police body camera. Investigators concluded that they did not find the blue shirt they were looking for. Prosecutors believe Alex attempted to influence a key witness's testimony by asking if she remembered the shirt he was wearing the night of the incident. Alex's cell phone records showed that he was only at his mother's house for about 15 to 20 minutes. Alex's MOT. Hers caretaker also confirmed this, claiming that he only stayed for about 15 to 20 minutes before leaving. However, Alex claimed that he stayed for at least 45 minutes, and possibly as long as an hour and a half. When asked how long he stayed with his mother, Alex responded, about 15 to 20 minutes. 20 minutes at most. The most important piece of evidence was found on Paul's phone, which was recovered at the scene. It included a video that Paul had recorded at 8:44 p.m., just minutes before investigators believe the murder occurred. The video was recorded in a dog kennel and featured the audio of 3 separate voices. Family and friends identified the voices as those of Paul, Maggie, and Alex. This placed Alex in the vicinity of the murders, although he claimed he was never in the doghouse that night. During the 5th week of the trial, Alex took the stand and insisted that he never intended to harm his wife and son. He admitted that he had lied about his alibi, claiming that his was because he was addicted to opiates and prone to paranoia at the time. Prosecutors argued that after Alex killed his wife and son, he used his wife's phone to make several calls and send text messages to construct his alibi. Cell phone records also showed that Alex and his wife's phones locked within seconds of each other, which was presented to the jury as additional evidence. Based on data from Alex's cell phone, prosecutors noted that he engaged in a number of unusual activities during the timeframe of the murders. They claimed he attempted to conceal or destroy evidence that could link him to the case. However, Alex's attorneys countered this claim by pointing out that Alex's phone activity did not align with his wife's actions, arguing that it was impossible to conclude that he took his wife's phone after the shooting. Ultimately, the video recorded at the dog kennel provided decisive evidence that influenced the case outcome. The jury returned its verdict after 3 hours of deliberation on March 2, 2023. They found Alex guilty on all counts and sentenced him to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. In addition, the jury also convicted him of 2 counts of using a weapon in a violent crime, which resulted in an additional 5 years in prison. Alex pleaded guilty to 22 counts of financial crimes as part of a deal but maintained his innocence regarding the murders of his wife and son. On March 9, 2023, he filed an appeal of his double murder conviction. During the trial, Alex's attorney filed a motion for a new trial after discovering evidence of jury tampering by Rebecca Hill, a Culleton County court clerk. Rebecca allegedly advised the jury not to believe Alex's testimony and the other evidence presented by the defense. She also allegedly pressured the jury to quickly return a guilty verdict and misrepresented key information to the judge. A hearing will be held for Alex's attorneys to present evidence and witnesses to support her claims. However, no judge has yet been selected to preside over the hearing. With Alex's appeal, more than 100 drug and financial crime charges, and multiple lawsuits pending, we can expect that more new information about Alex will be revealed in the future. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Romina Celeste Núñez Rodriguez. Romina Celeste Núñez Rodriguez was born in the fall of 1990 in Oñan, the capital of Paraguay. She was the oldest of 2 daughters in a poor working-class family. When the girls were still young, their parents divorced. Their mother, Miriam Rodriguez, had to raise them alone. She worked multiple jobs because her ex-husband did not provide any financial support and showed no interest in their well-being. When Romina was still in school, she started working to support her mother and younger sister. At 17, she entered a romantic relationship with a boy named Christopher. He courted her sweetly, and they dreamed of a future together. However, their happiness ended when Romina discovered she was pregnant and told Christopher. He responded by giving her an ultimatum that she could either have an abortion or they would break up for good. Romina was deeply wounded by her lover's words, but after talking to her parents, who she had always been close to, she made the decision to keep the baby. Her greatest fear was that having an abortion at such a young age might prevent her from ever becoming a mother in the future. Therefore, she felt she had no other option. Christopher, true to his word, ended all communication with her and showed no interest in Romina or their child's well-being. At 18, Romina gave birth to a son named Lucas. The arrival of the baby only made their already difficult financial situation worse. Money was extremely tight, and now Romina had to support her grandson too. Feeling depressed about their circumstances, she wanted to improve things and help her family, but she struggled to find a well-paying job in Paraguay. She called her aunt, who lived in sunny Spain. Her aunt invited her to come stay, saying it would be easier for Romina to settle there and that Europe offered more opportunities than Latin America. Without thinking too much, Romina packed only the essentials and bought a plane ticket to Spain. She left her 2-year-old son in the care of her mother and sister, planning to bring him to her once she found a new home and a stable job. In late summer 2010, Romina flew to Madrid and then traveled to Alcobendas, a provincial town, where she stayed at her aunt's house. She quickly started searching for a job, and luck was on her side. She secured a position as an administrator at a hotel, earning a good salary. She sent some of her earnings back home and used the rest to rent her own apartment, so as not to impose on her generous relatives. Romina soon met a man named Javier, and they entered into a tumultuous relationship. Like her, Javier had immigrated to Europe seeking happiness and a better life. He was originally from El Salvador, worked in construction, and appeared to be a serious individual. However, when Romina became pregnant, Javier was once again unprepared for the responsibility of parenthood. Despite this, they attempted to live together for a time. Unfortunately, shortly after their son was born, they ultimately separated. Romina found herself in a challenging situation, stranded in a foreign country with a newborn and unsure of what to do next. For a time, she returned to her aunt's house, where she received support and assistance. When the boy was about 6 months old, Romina returned to work because she couldn't afford to stay home. A few months later, she faced another shock. She had been ignoring her poor health and weakness, thinking they were just due to stress and fatigue. However, when Romina finally visited the doctor, she received a cancer diagnosis. She underwent several rounds of chemotherapy, lost her hair, and lost a significant amount of weight, but ultimately triumphed over the disease. After her treatment, she quickly recovered, continued working, and used wigs to cover her hair loss. Romina believed that after enduring such difficult challenges, a period of happiness was on the horizon. She saved money and planned to take her eldest son, along with her mother and sister, on a trip to Spain. In the summer of 2017, Romina attended an event with friends where she met a man named Raul Diaz. He was attractive, impressive, had a stable job, and was financially secure. Raul was drawn to Romina's beauty and began asking mutual friends about her. Romina was equally interested in Raul, and when he invited her on a date, she happily accepted. Raul was nearly 15 years older than Romina and worked as a lead process engineer at a large energy company. He had been through 2 divorces and had 2 teenage daughters from previous relationships, but Romina was not bothered by the age gap. Similarly, she was also a single mother, raising sons from her own 2 past relationships. After just 1 date, they quickly realized they were in love and didn't want to be apart. Romina, filled with excitement, enthusiastically shared her happiness with friends. Her new partner showered her with small gifts and thoughtful surprises nearly every day, organized romantic outings, sent flowers with heartfelt messages, and offered her compliments. Romina felt she had finally found true love and a man who would accept her and her sons. However, she soon began to hear unsettling rumors about him. People claimed that he had been rude and even cruel to his former wives, which had led to the end of both his marriages. Despite this, Romina didn't want to believe the rumors, although she noticed that Raul had no contact with either his ex-wives or his daughters. Despite their significant age difference and the presence of children from previous relationships, the couple did not let these factors stand in their way. Just 6 months after they met, they chose to move in together in a luxurious villa on Lanzarote, one of the Canary Islands. To Romina, this place felt like paradise, but her happiness was short-lived. Raul, who initially seemed like the perfect partner, soon revealed a controlling side. At first, they lived with Romina's youngest son, and Raul made an effort to take care of the child. Romina even believed he would be a great father to her boys. Raul promised her a long and happy life together, assuring her that he would take care of her and the children. Romina, deeply in love, trusted his words and eagerly accepted his proposal to marry him. However, Raul insisted they needed time alone together to fully enjoy their relationship before the wedding. Raul not only wanted to take Romina's eldest child from Paraguay, but he also hoped to distance himself from her youngest son. Despite this, Romina trusted her partner and ignored warnings from her friends who noticed his odd behavior. In June 2018, Raul purchased tickets for Romina and her child to travel to Paraguay, along with a return ticket solely for Romina. When she returned home and shared details about her partner, her mother and sister became uneasy about Raul's intentions. They suspected he simply wanted to get rid of her children. Romina was hurt by their comments and ended up having a small argument with her family. A few days later, she flew back to Spain, promising to return for the boys in the fall. When Romina got back, she received a warm welcome, and for 2 months, she was happily alone with Raul. However, in August, just a few days before the wedding, Raul violently attacked Romina. This was a shocking experience for her, but he pleaded for her forgiveness on his knees, assuring her that it would never happen again, and she chose to believe him. Romina did not report the incident or tell anyone about it. On August 10th, she attended the wedding with makeup covering her bruises, unaware that the man she was marrying would soon take her life. 2 weeks after the wedding, the girl returned to Paraguay, not to pick up her sons as she had initially planned, but to visit her family. Her mother and sister were confused by the changes they noticed in her since they last saw each other. Romina appeared upset and disoriented. She walked with a noticeable limp and had bruises on her neck, which she tried to cover with a scarf. When asked about her condition, Romina either remained silent or claimed she had hurt herself accidentally. She stayed at home for nearly a month, which surprised her relatives since she had just gotten married. Romina explained that her husband had suggested she visit her children because she missed them. Miriam praised her son-in-law for being generous, but she still couldn't understand why her daughter seemed so unhappy. In mid-September, Romina secretly borrowed money from her relatives to buy a return ticket to Spain because her husband refused to pay for it. This should have been a clear sign that returning was not a good idea, yet Romina still hoped for a happy resolution to their marriage. On September 17th, at the airport, her mother, sister, and sons saw her for the last time. After returning to her husband, Romina's life began to feel like a nightmare. Raul, who was using illegal drugs, no longer hid his addiction from her. When under the influence, he became aggressive and emotionally abused Romina. Each time she tried to leave, he promised to change and insisted that it wouldn't happen again. After the beatings and threats, there were often brief periods when Romina's husband would become loving and caring again, showering her with gifts and planning romantic outings. However, these peaceful moments became shorter over time, and instances of violence occurred more frequently. Just before the new year, Romina confided in her best friend that she feared her husband and worried he might eventually kill her. On December 29th, Raul beat her so severely that she had to seek medical attention. The hospital staff noticed something was wrong and considered calling the police to report the incident. At that moment, Raul arrived and insisted that Romina had simply fallen and that there was no need to involve the authorities. Romina went along with his story, declined hospitalization, and returned home with him. On January 1, 2019, Miriam, Romina's mother, repeatedly tried to call her daughter, but Romina did not answer. Concerned, Miriam then called her son-in-law to check on Romina, but he also did not answer. After several days of no contact, Miriam sent Raul a message indicating she would go to the police for help. This prompted Raul to quickly return her call, explaining that he and Romina had a fight on December 31st, after which she left with her belongings. He reassured Miriam that Romina would be okay and would return home soon, as this had happened before. Miriam, however, doubted Raul's explanation and felt something was wrong with her daughter. She insisted that Raul report the situation to the police. Finally, on January 8th, pressured by Romina's family, Raul reported her disappearance. This time, he altered his story slightly, claiming that after their quarrel, Romina had taken some money from him and suggested that she might have gone to Paraguay to see the children, which is why he was not too worried before he heard from Miriam. What was Raul hiding? His testimony was filled with confusion and contradictions, raising many questions and suspicions. As a result, law enforcement decided to investigate the couple's life. After speaking with friends and family, they discovered that the marriage was far from perfect. Romina had often complained to loved ones about her husband's abuse, though she never provided details. Others frequently noticed bruises and injuries on her body. The police decided to place Raul under covert surveillance, tapping his phone conversations. However, Raul seemed to sense that he was being monitored and acted very cautiously, avoiding any behavior that might raise suspicion. Despite this, the investigation continued, and it was soon revealed that Romina had visited the hospital on December 29 with signs of severe beating. Her husband almost forcibly took her from the hospital, preventing her from going to the police. A few months ago, Romina filed a report for domestic violence but retracted it the following day. A week later, Raul, having calmed down somewhat, made a phone call to a relative in the police and carelessly mentioned that his wife was no longer alive and that her body would never be found. This statement prompted police to arrest him as the primary suspect and interrogate him thoroughly. Raul claimed that on New Year's Eve, his wife had been drinking heavily and started to argue with him. She demanded that he bring their children to live with them. When he said he wasn't ready for that, she had a violent outburst, started fighting, and began throwing things at him. Raul stated that he left his house for a few hours until things calmed down. Upon returning, he discovered Romina in the bathtub, unresponsive. He suggested that she had suffocated due to excessive drinking but was worried he might be suspected of her death or accused of murder. To protect himself, Raul decided to erase all evidence and report her as missing. Everyone was shocked by his admission of how he disposed of her body. He claimed he burned Romina's body on a barbecue in the backyard. Living in a luxury complex with a spacious area, he thought the neighbors wouldn't notice what he was doing or smell the burning flesh. However, he underestimated the situation because the barbecue did not function like a crematorium, and her remains were not fully burned after several hours. He then removed the body from the fire, cut it into parts, and put the pieces into separate bags. A few days later, he rented a car to transport the dismembered body to a remote and desolate area of the island, where he discarded the bags into the sea from the cliffs. The police spent weeks searching the shoreline and surrounding areas based on Raul's statements about where he had thrown his wife's remains. Divers and many volunteers participated in the search for body fragments underwater, but none of their efforts produced any findings. Meanwhile, on January 16, Raul was officially charged with domestic violence and the murder of his wife. This development followed a detailed search of his home, which utilized specialized equipment and luminol. This search uncovered multiple traces of washed blood in different rooms. Investigators discovered that Raul had been ordering caustic soda online, a substance used for removing organic materials and paint. In one of the second-floor rooms, he had scrubbed a bloody stain on the floor so aggressively that he damaged it and then attempted to cover it up with paint. According to investigators, this is the room where Raul dismembered his wife's body. Additionally, a broken piece of Romina's fingernail was found on the floor, which had traces of blood and Raul's skin cells, suggesting that she may have been alive and fought back during the incident. Also in the bathroom, investigators discovered Romina's contact lens stuck to the wall, possibly from a strong impact to her face. Despite extensive searching, law enforcement could not find any other remains. Meanwhile, a tourist called to report a lung fragment he found on the beach. He was unsure if it was from a human or an animal, but knowing that authorities were looking for a body in the area, he reported his discovery. By the end of February, forensic analysis confirmed that the lung fragment belonged to Romina. Raul continued to claim his innocence despite the evidence and examination results. He maintained his original belief that the woman had drowned in a bathtub while heavily intoxicated, even though evidence suggested there had been a violent struggle. He also stated that he did not use any tools to dismember the body. Instead, he claimed to have tried to burn it completely on a barbecue, asserting that the remains fell apart due to the heat, and he then placed them in bags to dispose of. This account was false for several reasons. First, the body of the adult Romina could not have fit in the fixture in his yard. Second, bones cannot become so fragile from fire that they fall apart without tools. Additionally, separating the lung from the body would require opening the chest, which cannot be done with bare hands. The investigation could not determine exactly how Raul killed his wife, but the evidence of a struggle in their home suggested that he may have beaten her to death. It was clear that Raul dismembered her body in the same room where he later repainted the floor to hide the blood. Eventually, faced with overwhelming evidence, he admitted that he accidentally killed his wife during a fight, contradicting his earlier claim that he found her dead in the bathtub. Despite his claims that she was drunk and violent, the defendant was found guilty in June 2023. Romina's family felt the sentence was too lenient. He received a 12.5-year sentence for involuntary manslaughter, 2 years for confirmed domestic violence, and 1 year for causing serious bodily harm to Romina in December 2018 when she was hospitalized. He also received several months for bodily abuse. In total, the combined punishment was less than 16 years in prison. Raul is currently serving his sentence while simultaneously trying to appeal the court's decision. The story of Romina Celeste Núñez Rodriguez serves as a poignant reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the complex struggles faced by individuals seeking a better life. Despite her resilience and efforts to overcome adversity, Romina became a victim of a controlling and abusive relationship, ultimately leading to her untimely demise. The court's lenient verdict against her perpetrator reflects the ongoing challenges in addressing domestic violence, leaving her family and loved ones grappling with their loss and advocating for justice. As we reflect on Romina's case, it is crucial to continue raising awareness about the importance of supporting victims and holding abusers accountable to prevent such tragedies in the future. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Luisa Cedeno. On July 18, 2020, Maria Luisa Cedeno arrived at the Lamb Mission Inn Hotel in Manuel Antonio, in the Costa Rican province of Puntarenas. She was traveling with her little dog named Mafalda, it she treated like a daughter. The first day passed without incident. Maria Luisa went to the beach, had lunch at a restaurant, and drank some alcohol, activities common for tourists. However, the following day, everything changed. At 4:30 p.m. sharp, Maria requested that a bottle of wine, mineral water, and 2 glasses be brought to her room. It's worth noting that she didn't mention being with anyone, and everyone around her was convinced that she wanted to rest alone. Throughout the entire afternoon and night, no movement was recorded in her room. On July 20th, the hotel staff tried to contact her, but they received no response. A staff member had previously spoken with Maria, who mentioned that she lived alone because she had recently separated from her boyfriend, was not feeling well, and was only traveling with her small dog, Mafalda. Since several months had passed since the official start of the pandemic, Maria said that this had also affected her mental health, which was deteriorating. Considering everything she had been through, she said she needed a vacation. Therefore, the hotel staff decided to enter the room to check regularly in case of any unforeseen circumstances. The front door was locked from the inside, so they looked for another way in and checked the door leading to the patio. This room had an emergency exit for guests with pets. They had previously opened the patio door so the dog could go outside. When the staff approached this exit, they found the door half open. Upon entering, they were hit by a terrible odor and saw blood stains throughout the room. The dog was alive, trembling in a corner and avoiding the staff, likely due to trauma or fear. The lifeless body of Maria was found lying motionless on the bed, wrapped in a sheet. Maria Luisa Cedeno was a highly respected anesthesiologist. At 43, she led the Department of Anesthesiology and Rehabilitation at Sima Hospital in Esquezu. Her colleagues admired her greatly, and during the early pandemic, she was notably committed to helping patients in need. As a medical professional, she provided significant support to her loved ones, arranging health insurance, assisting with medical appointments. Maria's parents lived in San Carlos, which made it difficult for her to be with her family all the time. Friends described her as a strong, intelligent, and likable woman who loved traveling both within Costa Rica and internationally. Her reputation was impeccable. The news of Maria's death was a tremendous shock to her family and Costa Rica. People were left asking, who would want to harm someone like Maria? From the moment the hotel staff discovered the lifeless Maria body, the mysteries of this case began. The crime scene is confusing, not only because of the brutality Maria endured, but also because of the mysteries that arise as soon as they enter the hotel room she rented. Like most hotels worldwide, this hotel keeps a record of the magnetic keys used for the rooms. This means that each time a room is accessed, the card used is recorded, and the key's code is identified. This system allows they to determine whether the person accessing the room was a guest or a hotel employee. In Maria's murder, there was no record of any other keys being used other than hers. Maria had entered her room alone the previous night, with no one else entering through the main door. However, the room had a sliding glass door at the back that could be used as an alternative entry point. Since this door could only be locked from the inside, it is possible that Maria left the door unlocked, either intentionally letting someone in or accidentally leaving the door open. This allowed someone to enter and commit the murder. As the door didn't have an electronic lock system, there was no record of anyone entering or exiting through it. This was considered the most logical explanation at the time. After discovering Maria's body, hotel staff immediately contacted the police. Upon examining the scene, it was clear that she had been brutally murdered. Her body showed severe damage, indicating that she had been tortured by someone who was extremely enraged. Forensic experts collected evidence and analyzed every detail to determine the cause of death and identify the perpetrator. The authorities recommended a closed casket at the funeral due to the extreme level of brutality inflicted upon Maria. An autopsy was later performed, which showed that the body had multiple bite marks and 2 broken fingernails, indicating that Maria attempted to defend herself. The autopsy also revealed that the killer cleaned the she body after the murder. According to the investigator, Maria was killed in the bedroom, as evidenced by the large amount of blood found on the bed. The killer then moved the body to the bathroom, washed and dried it, wrapped it in a sheet, and placed it back on the bed. Although the killer attempted to wash the Maria body to eliminate evidence, this proved nearly impossible due to the extensive presence of blood throughout the room. Blood stains were found on the floor, walls, curtains, and bed, indicating the brutality of the attack. The forensic experts took photographs and collected as much physical evidence as possible from the scene. The body was then sent for an autopsy, and the police started interviewing the hotel staff and guests who may have witnessed or heard something. Given the state of the crime scene, it is likely that Maria screamed violently and her dog barked loudly during the attack. However, no one reported hearing any screams throughout the night. The hotel was relatively empty, but there were still a few people working at the hotel, and the hotel owner, Harry Bowden, who lived there with his husband Dano, were also present there. Additionally, Harry had allowed some acquaintances to stay at the hotel due to their financial difficulties. A bottle of wine and 2 glasses were found in Maria's hotel room. The wine had been ordered from room service. Later, investigators examined Maria's cell phone and found that she had sent a photo of the 2 glasses to a friend. However, the message did not indicate that she was with someone or she was waiting for someone to come to her room. She also sent an audio message to the same friend describing the hotel's all-inclusive package and its benefits. Maria seemed pleased with the service, mentioning that staff would bring her drinks, fruit, and other treats. She also mentioned interacting with hotel staff, including the bartender and hotelier's assistant, and noted that the owner was Dutch. Although she acknowledged the hotel is a bit worn out and understaffed, she expressed her overall satisfaction with her stay. The room cost 155,000 colons per night. Authorities investigating Maria's murder spoke with her friends and relatives to identify suspect. They discovered that she often ordered 2 glasses, even when alone, to have one for alcohol and one for water. This suggested she wasn't waiting for anyone at the time of the attack. The investigation revisited the initial theory: the attacker must have been someone who saw Maria in the hotel, noticed the back door was open and attacked her. However, the extreme brutality of the crime suggests that the killer had deep hatred and anger towards the victim, and often the killer knew the victim. Even so, there is no evidence that Maria was with anyone or had enemies at the time of her death. The autopsy revealed additional details about Maria's death, including signs of strangulation, blows to her face, arms, and chest, and evidence of abuse. After analyzing the autopsy results, conducting interviews with family, friends, and hotel staff, authorities concluded that the attack was likely carried out by multiple individuals. This theory was based on the fact that there were no reports of Maria screaming during the attack. Authorities believed that at least 2 attackers were involved, and they took complete control of Maria. Some investigators even suggested that a 3rd person may have been involved, as the victim showed signs of abuse. According to this theory, 2 assailants held Maria Luisa down and a 3rd raped her. All of this is evidenced by the fact that when her body was analyzed, there was no sign of rope or anything to indicate that she was tied up. Police speculated that the men may have stuffed something into Maria's mouth to stop her from screaming or to prevent her screams from being heard, in order to carry out the attack undetected. The cause of death was determined to be a head injury, which could have occurred in several ways. It might have been caused by a violent blow to the head, by being undressed, as there was evidence of fractured vertebrae, or by being hit with an object or falling heavily to the floor. Overall, what the assailants did to Maria was an atrocity, and without clear motivation. The first suspect was quickly identified because this man, who was staying at the hotel, had numerous fresh wounds resembling scratches and blows, suggesting he had been defending himself. Upon investigation, it was revealed to be Teodoro Herrera Martinez, an exotic dancer working in the city's nightclubs and staying at the hotel at the time of the murder. Teodoro was arrested when authorities were looking for evidence that he was involved in the murder. The man's footprints were compared to those at the crime scene. 2 matching prints were found on the black ceramic tile floor in front of the bed in the bedroom. A short time later, a second suspect named Luis Carlos Miranda was arrested. A hotel security guard had seen him walking in the hallways at night with Teodoro. Because Torreira was already in custody, Luis needed to be questioned to check for any links to the case. Additionally, tests revealed that his dental records matched the bite marks on Maria's body. Hotel employees testified that they saw Maria talking to Luis and, on one occasion, to Teodoro. However, their interactions were casual, like simple greetings, rather than those of acquaintances or friends. This might be because there were very few guests at the hotel, so they may have passed each other many times. Earlier, the hotel owner allowed 2 friends, Luis and Teodoro, to stay on the property due to financial difficulties. The police decided to question the owner of the hotel, Harry Bowden, after finding matching footprints and bite marks from the 2 suspects, Luis and Teodoro. During questioning, Harry revealed that on the night of the murder, July 19, 2020, he and husband were having dinner in their apartment within the hotel with Luis and Teodoro. After dinner, the 4 men went to a private pool. Harry also disclosed that Luis and Teodoro worked for him in exchange for accommodation. Luis managed the website and marketing, while Teodoro worked as a cook and bartender. The hotel owners and Luis and Teodoro were not close friends initially, but after moving into the hotel a year before the murder, they started spending more time together, going out for meals and socializing. And thus, the 4 men became friends. Although Harry cooperated by giving an interview in August 2020, but he was arrested because bite marks found on Maria's body matched his dental records, which began to reveal the truth. The police confiscated the phones of all the detainees and found text messages between Luis and Harry that turned out to be very compromising. In these messages, Luis invited Harry to have an intimate relationship with a woman he had been following. This exchange happened several days before the incident. However, Luis and Harry claimed that the messages didn't mean anything and that they were just joking, but that, along with the physical evidence, was enough for the authorities to keep them in jail while the case was being put together. The only person not arrested was Harry's husband. Because there was no evidence against him, no text messages, no fingerprints, and the bite marks didn't match those on Maria's body. Luis, Harry, and Teodoro's defense argued that the bite mark evidence was inconclusive and that none of them were involved in the murder. Despite this, the 3 men were charged with the murder of Maria. Before the trial, Harry's lawyer requested that he be released and placed under house arrest for 2 reasons. First, due to Harry being 69 years old, staying in jail was risky. Second, he had difficulty walking due to recent knee surgery. The defense claimed he had been using a cane for a long time, and at the trial's start, he appeared in a wheelchair. Because of this request, he was placed under house arrest and returned to the hotel where he was staying, and he couldn't leave the hotel. On September 13, 2022, the trial of Luis, Harry, and Teodoro began, where evidence against them was presented. The prosecution struggled to prove the involvement of Harry and Luis. They had text messages and bite marks on Maria's body as evidence. However, the bite marks couldn't definitively identify the murderer, they could only exclude suspects. All hotel employees were ruled out as suspects, but not these 2, Harry and Luis. In contrast, Teodoro had the most evidence against him. There was a blood trail, and he had wounds inflicted by Maria during her self-defense, as his blood was found under her fingernails. Blood was also found on his shoes, watch, and cell phone, located in his room during the search. Given this evidence, only Teodoro Herrera Martinez was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in prison, while Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda were acquitted due to a lack of physical evidence. Many people believe that Luis and Harry were involved in the murder because the hotel security cameras mysteriously stopped working on the day it happened. This suggests that someone might have planned it. A hotel security guard was also suspected, but he and the other two individuals could not be arrested due to a lack of evidence. Strangely, the guard left for another country after the murder, even though the police asked him to attend the trial as a witness. There are several aspects of this case that suggest more people might be involved. For example, two guests told the police that the hotel experienced a power outage for many hours on the night of the murder, which may have been intentional. This could have been done to disable the security cameras and the magnetic keys. A peculiar detail is that 9 days after the murder, investigators searched Harry's private office, which may have given him enough time to destroy any evidence. They not only analyzed text messages but also looked at Luis and Harry's social media accounts, where they discovered discussions about an idea directly related to how to find Maria's body. Legally, Harry and Luis are presumed innocent. The only person in prison for this murder is Teodoro Herrera Martinez, who is awaiting a new trial to see if his sentence can be reduced. Although the case is solved, but the Maria family suspects something is being hidden. They suspect a defense or cover-up. The family reported that the authorities returned Maria's belongings soaked in blood, which they find puzzling because they wanted to preserve the evidence in case new information emerged. They are satisfied with Teodoro's conviction, but not with the acquittal of Harry and Luis. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we will explore a new case. The case of Daniel LaPlante. In 1986, Frank Bowen, with his two daughters, Tina Bowen and Karen Bowen, experienced a series of terrifying events at their home in Townsend, Massachusetts. The girls initially believed that the house was haunted when strange phenomena began to occur, such as furniture being shuffled, strange noises coming from the walls, and threatening words written on mirrors and walls in a red material that looked like blood. These events left the family in extreme fear. Frank Bowen initially thought that his daughters were imagining things or playing a prank, but all doubts disappeared when he was faced with the terrifying truth. The person behind these bizarre events was Daniel LaPlante, a 16-year-old boy who lived nearby. In addition to trying to scare the Bowen family, Daniel secretly lived in their house for about 2 months. Taking refuge in the walls and narrow spaces between rooms, Daniel used secret passageways in the house to spy on and manipulate the family. The truth was discovered when Mr. Frank found Daniel in the house. Confronting him with a weapon in his hand, police later determined that Daniel had cut holes in the walls to move around undetected, turning the Frank home into a hiding place. Daniel LaPlante, often referred to as Danny, was born on May 15, 1970, in Townsend, Massachusetts. He grew up with his parents and 2 brothers. But his childhood was far from happy. Daniel endured various forms of abuse from his father, including physical, emotional, and abuse. After cutting ties with his father, Daniel began living with another man, who also treated him cruelly. Their home was an unhealthy environment, filthy and cluttered with garbage, with a yard full of trash and stray animals roaming freely. This atmosphere contributed to Daniel's growing disillusionment with life. He became rebellious, and his teachers frequently complained about his behavior. What began as troubling behavior eventually escalated into self-destructive tendencies. Daniel struggled socially, performed poorly in school, and was described by his classmates as strange, unhygienic, and unpleasant. Most avoided him because of his appearance and behavior, concerned by his actions. The school referred Daniel to a psychiatrist for help during their sessions. It was discovered that Daniel had dyslexia and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. While the psychiatrist initially appeared to want to help, he instead exploited Daniel's vulnerabilities. Over the course of a year, the psychiatrist coerced Daniel into an abuse relationship, further compounding the trauma he had already endured throughout his life. By 1986, as a teenager, desperate to escape his life of torment, Abuse began committing petty thefts in his neighbors' homes. Initially, he focused on stealing specific items, but over time, he shifted his focus to instilling fear in the residents. He started leaving cryptic, unsettling messages, rearranging household items to confuse the homeowners, and scattering crumbs and food stains throughout the houses. One of the homes he targeted belonged to the Bowen family. The Bowen family lived in Townsend, Massachusetts. In the same county as Daniel, the household consisted of Frank and his two daughters. The girl's mother had recently passed away from cancer, leaving the family grief-stricken and struggling to adjust to their drastically changed lives. When Daniel broke into their home, he noticed the family portraits, which radiated a sense of closeness and warmth. This enraged Daniel, who felt deeply unhappy with his own life. To him, such a family seemed like an impossible dream. It was then that he devised a sinister plan. Toward the end of 1986, one evening, Tina Bowen received an anonymous call from a young man who introduced himself as Daniel LaPlante. When Tina asked how he had gotten her phone number, Daniel claimed he attended the same school as her and had obtained it through a mutual friend. Curious, Tina asked if they had met before, and Daniel provided a false description of himself to spark her interest. He claimed to have bright blonde hair, an athletic build, and said he lived in her neighborhood. During their conversations, which continued for about a week, Daniel was very polite and charming, successfully gaining Tina's trust. After much persuasion, Daniel convinced Tina to go on a date with him. He offered to pick her up from her home, and his imagined charm seemed to win her over. However, when the big evening arrived, Daniel made no effort to clean up his appearance. When he showed up at the Bowen house and rang the doorbell, Tina immediately realized that everything he had claimed on the phone was untrue. As she opened the door, she saw that Daniel looked nothing like his description. His clothes were dirty, his physique was far from athletic, and his hair was dark instead of blonde. Despite her disappointment, Tina felt there might still be some trace of the charming man she had spoken with beneath it all. So, she decided to give him a chance. While they were walking together, Tina shared with Daniel that her mother had recently passed away from cancer. Instead of offering comfort, Daniel began asking her unsettling questions about her mother's appearance after death, what it was like to witness death up close, and the extent of her mother's suffering before she passed. The conversation was so unusual and inappropriate that it felt nothing like the casual evening chats Tina was used to. An hour into the date, Tina didn't leave, though she found the entire experience deeply strange and upsetting. She had never encountered someone so fixated on her mother's death, and Daniel's blunt, insensitive questions showed no regard for the pain she and her family had endured. This left she feeling profoundly sad. Tina later expressed her sadness to her younger sister, saying how much she missed their mother and how desperately she wished to speak with her again. One evening, while home alone, Tina and her sister decided to try contacting their mother's spirit using a Ouija board. They went down to the basement and, with little expectation that it would work, began the ritual. However, their efforts were unsuccessful when they heard their father returning from work. The sisters quickly hid the Ouija board and went back to their room. Later that night, just after midnight, Tina and Karen were startled awake by a series of knocks on their bedroom wall. Excited, the sisters believed it was their mother attempting to communicate with them. They felt their spiritualism session had not been in vain. When they asked directly if it was truly their mother, a loud knock sounded on the wall, which the girls took as a definite yes. For several nights, strange events continued to occur, but only Tina and Karen were aware of them. However, when they tried to show their father the supernatural activity, nothing happened. It all began with faint knocks on the walls, but soon objects started disappearing. Items left on the table were found scattered on the floor the next day. The The girls noticed furniture moving on its own, and food and drinks vanishing mysteriously. These occurrences unsettled them, and they began doubting that it was their mother trying to communicate. After all, their mom wouldn't frighten them like this. When the girls explained everything to Frank, he dismissed their claims. He believed the so-called supernatural events were just the girls acting out. Frank assumed Tina and Karen were seeking attention and tried to remain patient, convinced they would eventually overcome their pain. However, as time went on, Tina and Karen became increasingly terrified of their own home. The knocks on the walls and other strange happenings were driving them to the brink. Still, Frank refused to believe Tina and Karen. In desperation, Tina decided to confront the spirit directly. Now, she's certain it wasn't their late mother. Tina grabbed a knife from the kitchen and, along with Karen, went down to the basement. On one of the walls, they found a message written in red letters, which they immediately assumed was blood. The message read, "I am in your room. Find me." Terrified, Tina and Karen ran to the neighbor's house. Desperate to escape the torment they believed was caused by the spirit they had summoned, Tina and Karen anxiously waited for their father to return home from work. When Frank arrived, he immediately noticed the chaos upon seeing the message on the basement wall. He quickly realized it was written in tomato sauce. Furious, he lashed out at his daughters, scolding them for going too far and damaging their own home. He told them they needed a healthier way to deal with their pain, and even threatened to send Tina and Karen to a psychotherapist after this unsettling incident. Everything seemed to go back to normal. The supernatural events stopped, and the family began to relax. Life resumed its usual peaceful rhythm. The girls behaved calmly, and Frank continued his work as if nothing had happened. However, one day, a knock on the wall signaled the ghost's return. Tina and Karen, consumed by fear, returned to the basement, where all their troubles had begun. Suddenly, they heard another loud knock from upstairs. Panicked, they ran to Tina's bedroom, only to find a chilling message written in large red letters on the wall. "I'm back. Find me if you can." Tina grabbed her sister's hand, and they fled the house, seeking help from their neighbor, alarmed by the sister's story and their state. The neighbor promptly called Frank to inform him of what was happening. When Frank heard that his daughters were involved in another disturbing incident, he rushed home to address the situation. Convinced his daughter's actions were escalating, he decided to get to the bottom of it. Upon arriving at the neighbor's house, Frank questioned Tina and Karen about the events, shaking with fear. They said everything, including the unsettling message they had discovered, determined to put an end to their fears. Frank decided to go back to the house alone to investigate. As he stepped inside, Frank was met with chaos. The entire house was in disarray. Clothes and belongings were scattered across the floor. He immediately realized this mess was far beyond what his daughters could have caused. When he entered Tina's bedroom, he found the same disturbing message the girls had described earlier, and now an additional chilling note was scrawled beneath it. "Marry me, confused and uneasy." Frank felt something was terribly wrong. A shiver ran down his spine as he sensed a presence behind him. Turning around, his heart sank. In the corner of the room stood a young man. The man was dressed in Frank's late wife's wedding dress and a blonde wig, even more horrifying. He was holding an axe, though shaken to his core. Frank quickly realized one thing. This was no ghost. Frank chased the intruder until this man fled and disappeared from sight immediately afterward. He called the police. Investigators conducted a thorough search of the house and discovered a hidden space behind a closet in one of the rooms. Inside the wall, they found a small door leading to an underground cavity or passageway between the house's walls, large enough for someone to move through. When a police officer entered the hidden area, they found Daniel curled up in a ball in one corner. Daniel was arrested, with Frank identifies him as the man in the wedding dress who threatened Frank with an axe. Later, authorities uncovered more troubling details about the incident. Tina confided in her father about an unsettling date she had gone on with Daniel a few months earlier. investigators determined that Daniel had used the hidden passageways to torment Tina and Karen inside the space. Police found a sleeping bag, clothing belonging to the family, and leftover food. The most disturbing discovery, however, was that the secret space connected to every room in the house. This allowed Daniel to move through the walls undetected, spy on the family, and communicate with the girls through the distinct knocking sounds that had terrified them at the time of his arrest. 16-year-old Daniel was sent to a juvenile facility when he turned 17. Court documents were filed to begin trying his case as an adult. He faced multiple charges, including robbery, burglary, and property damage. In October 1987, Daniel was released on bail after his mother paid nearly $10 for his release after returning to his mother and stepfather's home. Daniel was instructed to stay out of trouble and await his court date on December 11, 1987. However, he ignored these instructions and resumed burglarizing nearby homes during one of these break-ins. He found a weapon, which he took with him in November. His stepfather discovered the weapon hidden in a laundry basket when confronted. Daniel lied and refused to reveal where he had obtained the weapon, although his stepfather confiscated it. It was unclear whether Daniel had access to another one on December 1, 1987. Daniel walked approximately 2 kilometers to reach the large, comfortable mansion of the Gustafson family. The family consisted of 33-year-old Priscilla, her husband Andrew, their 2 children, 7-year-old Abigail and 5-year-old William, and Priscilla is pregnant with their 3rd child. The Gustafson family were a close-knit family dedicated to helping others. Andrew worked as a lawyer and was often away from home, while Priscilla worked at a kindergarten, sang in a choir, and actively participated in their church. On that tragic day, when Daniel broke into their home, only Priscilla and William were there. At this time, Abigail was still at school. He overpowered Priscilla, dragged her into the bedroom, and assaulted her. Afterwards, he suffocated her with a pillow to muffle the sound, and then attacked her twice in the head. Once Priscilla was dead, Daniel turned his attention to William. He carried the boy to a filled bathtub on the 2nd floor and drowned him. Shortly after Abigail arrived home from school, Daniel immediately grabbed Abigail, took her to the bathtub on the 1st floor, and drowned her in it. Just like William, when Andrew arrived at the house around 6 p.m., he immediately sensed something was wrong. The children were not playing as they usually did, and his wife did not come to greet him in the hallway when he called out for Priscilla. There was no response. Concerned, Andrew went to the bedroom, where he discovered a horrifying scene. Priscilla was lying lifeless in an unnatural position, with bloodstains all around, in shock. Andrew called the police right away. He could not even search the house to find the children when the investigators arrived. They found Andrew in such a state of shock that he was unable to think clearly during their search of the house. The police discovered the bodies of the children. Among the evidence collected were 2 spent cartridges from a weapon, strands of the attacker's hair on the bed and on Priscilla's body, an open beer can, and shoe prints near the entrance. Suspicion quickly fell on Daniel, a recently paroled young man who lived near the Gustafson home. He was known for his skill in breaking into nearby houses, which made him a prime suspect. While investigators were searching for him, Daniel was at the city library when questioned about his whereabouts on December 1. He claimed he had been at a family birthday party. He denied any involvement in the case of the Gustafson family and expressed sorrow over what had occurred. The police initially appeared to believe his story, but later, they visited Daniel's home with additional questions and a search warrant. When Daniel was sitting on the porch, spotted the police car. He immediately realized they were there for him, so he fled and hid in the woods. Daniel's actions confirmed the investigators' suspicions were right, and them to search Daniel's house inside. They discovered several shoe soles that matched the footprints found near the Gustafson home. They also found fibers that appeared to be connected to the crime. A sock with saliva stains likely used to gag Priscilla, a .22 caliber shell casing similar to one found at the crime scene, and a cordless phone stolen from the Gustafson home. Additionally, the Daniel family's car was examined. They revealing weapon in the glove compartment. Police quickly called for reinforcements to search for Daniel, the main suspect in the case of the Gustafson family. Over 50 officers participated in the search, aided by helicopters and sniffer dogs that thoroughly combed the forest. A crucial tip came from an emergency call. The caller revealed that Daniel had threatened her with a gun and forced her to drive him away in her truck. Thankfully, she managed to escape. This information helped investigators identify the model of the car Daniel used to flee on the run. He committed several additional robberies, leaving witnesses at the scenes who later reported him to the police. Daniel LaPlante was arrested on December 3, 1987, at 6:03 p.m. while trying to hide behind a garbage can in Ayers Town at the time of his arrest. He was armed and had committed several crimes while evading capture. Daniel's trial began in October 1988, when he was 18 years old, although most of his crimes occurred when he was a minor. The judge decided to try him as an adult. Daniel pleaded not guilty. Despite strong evidence against him, Daniel's defense claimed he was mentally unfit to stand trial, but a psychiatric evaluation determined that he could understand right from wrong and was fit for trial. The jury found Daniel LaPlante guilty of murdering the Gustafson family and sentenced him to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole in 1993. Daniel attempted to appeal his sentence, arguing that the search warrant for his home was issued improperly, but he was unsuccessful. In 2000, Daniel requested a transfer to another prison due to safety concerns after receiving threats from fellow inmates, and this request was approved. Then, in 2013, Daniel expressed dissatisfaction with not being allowed to practice his religion freely because his rituals would have required ingredients like blood and banned substance. In 2017, Daniel submitted a petition seeking a reduced sentence, claiming he was under 18 when he committed the crimes, so he should not be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He aimed to serve just 1 life sentence instead of 3 consecutive ones. However, his request was denied because he was required to serve time for each life he had ruined. His statement to the judge was as follows: "I cannot adequately express the weight of my actions. I have taken the lives of 3 innocent people because of my choices. A 5-year-old boy will never celebrate his 6th birthday, and 7-year-old girls will never turn 8. Their mother will not have a 3rd child, and I have robbed an unborn baby of its first breath. This woman may never hear the words, 'I love you' again to my family. I am deeply sorry for the pain I have caused. My remorse is profound and heartfelt." In 2019, Daniel LaPlante applied for parole again, but the authorities was decided that his request would not be reviewed until 2032. Many believe that Daniel lacks the capacity for remorse or any genuine feelings, and they see him as someone who is capable of psychological torment and brutal killings. This raises concerns that if he is released, he may seek out new victims. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case, the case of Saga Elneborg. Saga Elneborg was a 20-year-old girl who was 7 months pregnant at the time. She was in a relationship with her boyfriend, Mohammedaman Dirisek Ibrahim, the father of her child. They had been together for about 2 years and were expecting a baby boy. With doctors confirming that the pregnancy was progressing well, Saga was eagerly looking forward to becoming a mother in just a few weeks and had carefully prepared for the birth of her child during this time. She shared pictures of her growing belly and many items she had bought for her future child on social media. She was especially fond of posting pictures of children's clothes. On April 28, 2023, Saga had scheduled a meeting with her boyfriend, Mohammed Amin, to discuss their relationship. That day, She informed her mother that Mohammed Amin was planning to visit her home, so Melissa decided not to interrupt their conversation. Saga's family was very cautious about her relationship with someone from a different culture, especially since they knew that challenges could arise when meeting Mohammed Amin's family from Somalia. At that time, Mohammed Amin was standing outside Saga's apartment door when he entered the house. Saga began to share some of the problems they were having in their relationship. Saga still loved Mohammed Amin and wanted their relationship to succeed. However, she felt uncomfortable when he often hid her from his parents, which caused conflicts between them. On April 29, 2023, at around 1 p.m., Saga's mother, Melissa, came to her daughter's apartment to support her and help gather her belongings in preparation for the arrival of her grandson. When Melissa arrived at the apartment, she was talking on the phone with her other daughter. She rang the doorbell several times, but no one answered, which surprised her. She knocked on the door, used the intercom, and even called Saga's phone and sent a text message. What puzzled she was that there was still no response from Saga. She thought that her daughter might have forgotten about her visit and gone out to run an errand. Although Melissa had a spare key, she noticed that the door was unlocked as she approached, which seemed very suspicious. Saga was always careful to lock the door. Even when she stepped out for a moment to get the mail or do the laundry, there was no way she would leave the door open. When she entered the apartment, Melissa heard the sound of running water in the kitchen, so she rushed in to turn it off. She called out to her daughter, but there was no answer. When Melissa entered her daughter's bedroom, she found the lights off, and the darkness made her feel uneasy. When Melissa turned on the light, she was horrified to see her daughter lying on the floor. Saga was there, with a light cord wrapped around her neck. The scene was even more terrifying because a heavy table had fallen over. Melissa rushed to her daughter's side, pushed the table aside, and carefully removed the cord from her neck. She then called emergency services while attempting to give her daughter first aid. The first thing she noticed was that Saga's body was stiff and very cold, indicating that she had been dead for a considerable amount of time. Paramedics arrived quickly, but unfortunately, both Saga and her unborn child were dead. The police who arrived began an investigation and noted that she had suffered head and facial injuries. The crime scene was covered in dried blood, and jewelry boxes were found upside down on the floor. There were no signs of forced entry, but the police initially considered that she had taken her own life. However, after reviewing data from Saga's cell phone, they concluded that she could not have ended her life by herself. Saga had no mental health problems. She was cheerful and lively. Especially during her pregnancy, she was eagerly awaiting the birth of her child and could never have harmed herself or her baby. Forensic experts collected a significant amount of evidence at the crime scene, including fingerprints, blood, and DNA from under Saga's fingernails and from her belongings for analysis. The forensic expert concluded that Saga died of strangulation, with an estimated time of death between 1 and 3 in the morning. On the forensic expert's desk were not only Saga's body, but also the body of her newborn baby. Weighing 1.7 kg, tests showed that the baby was completely healthy. This was a devastating shock to Saga's mother, family, and friends. The police quickly launched an investigation into the messages from Saga's relatives. The first person they spoke to was her mother, Melissa. She explained that on April 28, her daughter had planned to meet some friends at a local restaurant. Melissa noticed that her daughter seemed very anxious and was checking her phone frequently. Saga said that she did not want to miss a message from her boyfriend, Mohammed Amin. Melissa revealed that he had already informed his parents about Saga. However, before that, Mohammed Amin had been extremely anxious and nearly had a nervous breakdown because he feared that his parents would not approve of his relationship with Saga. His parents are Muslims with strict conservative beliefs. In contrast, Saga is a Swedish citizen with Thai and European heritage, and she holds more modern views. Mohammed Amin and his family are refugees. His parents brought him to Europe when he was a child. Although he grew up in Europe and embraced modernity, he still valued his family's traditions. Another important issue was the difference in religion. Mohammed Amin's family was Muslim, while Saga's relatives were Christian. This difference in beliefs and traditions often led to conflict, straining their relationship. After dining at the restaurant, Saga said goodbye to her mother and friends, who wished her well, not knowing that it would be the last time they would see her alive. Tragically, after returning home, Saga was murdered. Police suspect that Mohammed Amin may have informed his family about his relationship with Saga, which may have provoked their violent reaction and ultimately led to the tragedy. During the initial stages of the investigation, the police looked into whether Mohammed Amin's relatives were involved in the murder. His mother had raised suspicions when she left home late at night. However, it was later confirmed that she had only gone to the shop and returned after about 15 minutes. There was no evidence that his relatives were involved in the case. The police also discovered that one day, Mohammed Amin's mother found the car he was using parked near Saga's house. At that time, his mother suspected he was having a romantic relationship with a Christian woman. After discovering this, Mohammed Amin's mother was furious. She informed him that he was no longer welcome in their home. She felt that if he did not respect their traditions, it would be easier to cut ties with him. In his defense, Mohammed Amin claimed that he had never visited those people and that he had convinced her of that. However, according to Melissa, their relationship had deteriorated since Saga became pregnant. It was rumored that Mohammed Amin wanted her to have an abortion because he was afraid of his family's reaction. Despite this pressure, Saga decided to continue with the pregnancy and give birth. She said that if necessary, she could raise the child herself. In October, Saga shared the news of her pregnancy with her family, and everyone was very happy at that time. Her relationship with her boyfriend was not good, as they often had conflicts due to cultural differences, which made communication difficult. Saga felt that if Mohammed Amin did not change his views, it would be difficult for them to connect. However, a few months later, things seemed to improve. He began to adapt to her lifestyle and accepted the pregnancy. Appearing happy to be a father, Saga then moved into a larger apartment with a nursery, which she began to decorate. By March 2023, they were still together, but there were some troubling signs in their relationship. A friend confided in Saga that Mohammed Amin had tried to convince her that she needed to kick Saga in the stomach multiple times to induce a miscarriage. Saga was furious when she learned about this, but Mohammed Amin insisted that it was all a fabrication. Melissa knew about these disturbing events, but did not want to accept them as true. However, now that her daughter was dead, it was clear that Mohammed Amin's intention to harm Saga was real. The police began to piece together a timeline of events and soon discovered that Mohammed Amin and Saga had planned to spend that evening together. However, he seemed to be avoiding Saga, intentionally staying late at work to avoid seeing her that evening. Saga spoke to him. She told Mohammed Amin that he needed to tell his family about their relationship, the move, and her pregnancy, or they would break up. On April 28, Saga was waiting to hear from him, according to Melissa. Her daughter seemed quite anxious during this time. The police reviewed cell phone records and confirmed that Saga had been in contact with Mohammed Amin until 11 p.m. on April 28. He had said that he would not inform his parents about Saga and their relationship, stating that his family was more important than having an illegitimate child. Saga felt disappointed with his decision and tried to convince him to reconsider. She argued that if they broke up, his family would eventually find out about the child because she had planned to seek financial support from him. After discussing their situation, Mohammed Amin agreed to tell his family about Saga and the baby. He expressed his anxiety, saying that he felt like his heart was going to burst. This was the last message he sent her before she was killed. Police believe that Saga's determination to reveal the truth and her ability to tell his parents herself motivated Mohammed Amin to attack the girl. He remains the only suspect in the case. Mohammed Amin was brought in for questioning. He claimed he had nothing to do with the incident and stated that on the night of the murder, he had returned home to confess to his parents about his relationship with Saga. However, geolocation data showed that this was not true. Mohammed Amin had, in fact, gone to his girlfriend's apartment when told that he was the prime suspect in Saga's murder. Mohammed Amin became defensive. He insisted he was innocent and had an alibi, claiming that he was driving with a friend at the time of Saga's murder. However, the friend was on the phone with someone else and refused to testify, despite his alibi failing. Mohammed Amin maintained that he last saw Saga on the evening of April 27. Mohammed Amin stated that he had confessed their relationship to his parents. However, the police discovered that he had never spent a full night at her new apartment, as he was afraid his family would find out. Due to Mohammed Amin's suspicious behavior, the police decided to arrest him and keep him in custody while they continued their investigation. He was detained for several months. Eventually, the prosecution gathered strong evidence against him, claiming it was sufficient to ensure victory in court. The investigation even involved specially trained dogs, which helped identify some of the evidence. Mohammed Amin's lawyer argued that the dogs' findings should not be the main basis of the case, as they were not a reliable source of information. However, there was still much more evidence against him. DNA analysis and a review of the evidence took quite a while, but eventually confirmed the truth of the case. Mohammed Amin wrapped an electric cord around Saga's neck while she was sleeping on the sofa. He then dragged Saga to the floor and attempted to push her onto her stomach in an effort to force her to terminate the pregnancy. Despite her best efforts to protect her child, Saga sustained injuries to her hip. Mohammed Amin then attempted to strangle Saga, pressing the edge of the table against her throat. Exhausted and unable to lift the heavy object, Saga suffocated. When she died, the table was still pressed against her throat, leaving a deep dent after committing the crime. Mohammed Amin tried to make it look like a robbery by throwing some boxes around. The defense argued that Saga was the victim of real robbers who stole money and various household items. However, the prosecutor believed that Mohammed Amin's actions only added to his guilt. Several missing items were later discovered during a search of his home. He claimed that these items were either his or gifts from his girlfriend. A key piece of evidence against him was his DNA found under Saga's fingernails. In addition, a forensic expert determined that Saga had been abused before her death. Mohammed Amin claimed that the act was consensual and had occurred a few days before her death. However, the prosecution cast doubt on his testimony, highlighting inconsistencies and lies in his statements during interrogation. Police found multiple traces of his DNA in Saga's apartment. The investigation revealed some disturbing searches by Mohammed Amin. Notably, he searched whether kicking a mother in the stomach could harm her unborn child. The prosecutor's office believes that instead of visiting his family, Mohammed Amin went to Saga's apartment. He never intended to tell his family about her for fear of their reaction, but Saga pressured him with her demands. In response, he killed her. Motivated by fear of his parents, the defense argued that the DNA found under Saga's fingernails could have been there long before the murder. However, Melissa, Saga's mother, insisted that her daughter was very clean and had showered shortly before her death. She knew this, especially during Saga's pregnancy. As her daughter was meticulous about her personal hygiene, it is clear that Saga had showered and changed into clean clothes, meaning that the DNA evidence found on her body and belongings was still fresh and must have been left behind during the attack. Curiously, After Saga's death, Mohammed Amin quickly deleted her from Snapchat and removed his social media accounts. The police found that he was trying to hide his connection to the crime. Fortunately, the deleted data was easily recovered and added to the evidence against him. Although there was no direct evidence, Mohammed Amin's behavior clearly showed that he was indifferent to his girlfriend, Saga. During the investigation, it was noted that he was a short distance from her apartment while continuing to communicate with her from afar. He neither approached nor left, as if he were waiting for something. It is possible that during this time, he was trying to muster the courage to attack or wanted to ensure that Saga was asleep. At 2 a.m., Mohammed Amin's cell phone signal went off. He then turned on his phone to try to contact his friend, but his call was ignored. An active call signal from him was detected in the same residential area where Saga lived. This evidence helped the police uncover another lie by Mohammed Amin. He claimed that during this time, he was at home with his parents. However, Mohammed Amin's cell phone only became active at 2:16 a.m., which matched the forensic expert's conclusion about the time of death of Saga and her child. Mohammed Amin's story kept changing. At one point, he fabricated a story about a gang of robbers. He claimed to have hidden a bag of money in Saga's home, but he never explained where he obtained the large sum. According to Mohammed Amin, the robbers broke into Saga's home to steal the cash. Saga tried to stop the robbers, which ultimately led to her murder. The prosecutor's office rejected this idea. As there were no signs of forced entry at the crime scene, it was clear that Saga had either let the killer into her home willingly or that he had a key to her apartment. Mohammed Amin had a motive for the crime. During his 9 months in prison, he never confessed and steadfastly denied any involvement. However, the prosecutor's office gathered a significant amount of evidence, both direct and indirect, to support their case. Although he did not admit to the crime, he expressed fear about telling his family about Saga. He claimed to love her and even the child, but he believed his conservative parents would disown him for dating a European girl. After hearing arguments from both the prosecution and the defense, the jury deliberated on the verdict. On June 9, 2024, they unanimously found Mohammed Amin Abdirisek Ibrahim guilty of the premeditated murder of Saga Elnaborg, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Despite this, he maintained that he loved both Saga and his unborn child. Claiming that he never intended to harm them, he insisted that violence was not part of his character and that this was the first crime he had ever committed. The investigation revealed that Mohammed Amin had been seeing other women regularly during the 2 years of his relationship with Saga. Although he denied any extramarital affairs, evidence showed that he had numerous meetings with different girls, some of which became intimate. This information further tarnished his reputation. His defense attorney, meanwhile, argued that Mohammed Amin was innocent and that Saga had been the victim of an attempted robbery. The attorney promised to fight for his freedom and intended to appeal the jury's decision. An appeal was filed shortly after the decision was announced, but the final outcome remains unclear. Although Mohammed Amin was charged with Saga's murder, he was never charged in connection with the death of his unborn child, which angered Saga's family. The investigation attracted considerable public and media attention. The tragedy once again highlighted issues surrounding migrants, especially those from Muslim countries, who have been arriving in Sweden more frequently in recent years. Many people have noted that these migrants struggle to integrate into European society and often refuse to accept individuals from different cultures. A violent murder arising from cultural and religious differences sparked public outrage and prompted calls for government action. Some defended Mohammed Amin, claiming he was innocent. His family argued that he had no violent tendencies, and many believed in his innocence, offering him strong support. According to relatives, Mohammed Amin, was not ready to be a father, but he maintained that he loved his girlfriend and son, even after their tragic deaths. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Dana Laskowski. At approximately 11 a.m. on August 31, 2001, a couple from a small town near Seattle, Washington, called the police to request a welfare check on their nanny, Dana Laskowski, 36. She had never been late before, but that day, she did not show up. Although Dana had been caring for the couple's children for a long time and had always been reliable, the police then went to Dana's house at the address provided by the couple but found no one at the door. The officers then began searching the surrounding area and peering through the windows. A second officer checked the rooms through the windows until he reached the living room. It was dark and quiet inside, and he noticed a woman lying on the sofa under a blanket. At first, the officer thought she was just sleeping. However, he wondered why she did not respond to the repeated knocking. When he shined his flashlight into the room, he saw the woman in an unusual position. With one hand behind her back, she was still, indicating that something was seriously wrong. All the windows were locked and the blinds were drawn, so the scene could only be seen clearly from the inside. Fortunately for the police, the back door was open, suggesting that the criminal had entered and left through that door. The police entered Dana's home and discovered drops of blood on the floor, some of which appeared to be smeared, indicating that there had been an effort to wipe them away. Dana was dead, and there were no signs of abuse. Bruises were visible on her neck, elbows, and knees. An autopsy revealed multiple fractures. The medical examiner determined that Dana died from strangulation. The police believe that the perpetrator entered the home with the intention of killing her. Not by accident, they found a broken window in the basement, which they suspect was the killer's point of entry. While some valuables were missing from Dana's residence, it appeared that furniture and items had been thrown from drawers onto the floor. However, this looked more like a staged crime scene than a sign of a robbery. As the police walked through the kitchen, they noticed a knife rack that had been completely untouched. This could indicate that the attacker had carefully planned the crime in advance. Typically, victims would be struck in the face or head to disorient them, but there were no signs of such injuries on Dana. It appeared that Dana had been strangled instantly. Forensic experts understand that strangulation is not as simple as it appears. It is a lengthy process that requires considerable strength and endurance. An autopsy found only a single mark on Dana's neck, suggesting that her attacker had held her down. When the police discovered that Dana was the mother of 9-year-old triplets, they were anxious to search her home for the children. Fortunately, they discovered that the children were not present at the time of the attack. The events that unfolded shocked the entire local community. Dana was known for her kindness and sensitivity, making her an unlikely victim of a violent crime. She avoided conflict and did not participate in illegal activities. The police compiled a list of suspects when they began investigating messages from the security service regarding Dana's acquaintances. To all who knew her, she was considered a creative and caring person. Dana's creativity stemmed from her father, a highly recognized artist, while her caring nature was inherited from her mother. This nurturing trait guided her life path. Growing up, she often babysat and was highly regarded by her neighbors for her skills. Dana aspired to open her own private kindergarten more than anything. She longed to be a mother, but this dream proved difficult to achieve. In 1989, when she was 24, she met a man named Sam. Romance quickly blossomed between the young couple, and they were married within months. Dana longed to start a family, but she faced infertility challenges. After 4 years of treatment, she learned she was pregnant with triplets, 2 boys and a girl. It was a moment she and her husband had long awaited. However, new challenges arose. Dana became famous when she shared her story with a local newspaper in 1992, discussing the difficulties she faced throughout her pregnancy. In her 5th month, she was hospitalized and told by doctors that she could give birth within 72 hours and that they might lose their baby girl. The couple cried all night over the news. Dana was then advised to rest completely at the clinic. Miraculously, she managed to carry the pregnancy to 8 months. This was a difficult period, but also a significant victory for her, something she often talked about later. In April 1993, she gave birth to triplets. The girl was the smallest, weighing just 1.5 kg, while the boys each weighed around 2 kg. The couple began to face new challenges when it came to raising children, which was not easy. However, Dana handled the situation very well. In 1996, she was interviewed as a local celebrity for having given birth to triplets. When asked about raising 3 children at once, she humorously recounted the moment when she was so exhausted that she went to the shops in her pajamas and slippers. Tragically, Dana, the proud mother of 3, was found strangled in her own living room. The police are investigating her surroundings to determine who might be responsible. It was revealed that in 2000, after 11 years of marriage, Dana chose to divorce Sam and raise the children on her own, along with her 3 children. Her 17-year-old niece, Amanda, who frequently ran away from home, and a friend named Emily Launborg also moved in with Dana after the tragedy. The police found very little evidence at the scene. They needed to interview all of Dana's relatives, starting with her ex-husband Sam. Initially, there were suspicions surrounding him. The police tried to inform him of the tragedy, but were unsuccessful. They also needed to check on the triplets, who were believed to be with Sam at the time. Sam did not answer calls for several days, raising serious concerns about his involvement. However, Sam eventually called the police back, explaining that he had gone camping with the children and was unaware of the situation. He said they had no cell service at their campsite, so they were unable to listen to any voice messages from family members upon returning from the trip. Sam and the children were shocked to discover multiple voice messages from the police, family, and friends, all relaying the tragic news of Dana's death and the urgent search for Sam and the children. At this point, Sam became the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that he may have intentionally run away and kidnapped the children. The couple may have had ongoing disputes over child custody, alimony, and unresolved issues from their divorce, which could have provided him with a possible motive. The police discovered that Sam was unhappy with the court's custody ruling. He wanted to spend more time with the children, but his access was severely restricted. Additionally, Dana had moved away, making it difficult for him to visit and be with the children. Several witnesses noted that he was greatly affected by divorce, viewing her actions as an attempt to tear their family apart. However, he never acted cruelly or aggressively toward her or the children. The police quickly noticed that he was a tall man, indicating that he had the physical strength to handle Dana. Their suspicions grew as they spoke with him. He refused to provide fingerprints and a DNA sample, claiming that he did not want to be named as a suspect. Sam also mentioned that his DNA samples were at the Dana house because he frequently visited during meetings with the children. He had several cuts on his legs, which he said he received while playing baseball with his sons, a claim that was later verified. Sam insisted that he had been with his sons the entire time. 3 hours away from Dana's house, he even had a gas station receipt to back up his alibi. The triplets confirmed that they had been with their father the entire time and that he had not left to go on any long trips. While it was theoretically possible that Sam could have driven 3 hours to the house, committed the act, and returned while the children were asleep, this scenario seemed unlikely. A caring father would not have left his children alone in the woods for 6-7 hours, and the children repeatedly claimed that he had been with them the entire time. When the children woke up at night, he would have gently covered them with a blanket. It seemed improbable that they would have been forced to lie in such a situation, especially since their statements were completely consistent. As a result, Sam was quickly eliminated as a suspect. After these events, Sam's 3 children moved in with him now, it was necessary to investigate other potential suspects, but this proved challenging. Even Dana's niece, Amanda, who lived with her most of the time and probably knew her better than anyone else, had no idea who could have harmed her. Amanda described her aunt as her second mother and best friend. She stated that she was not home the night Dana was murdered and therefore did not know if Dana was expecting visitors. Dana was known to be quite sociable, often welcoming friends at all hours. She was so trusting that she often left her back door unlocked, allowing anyone to enter. Dana was also a very attractive woman, which could have attracted the attention of dangerous people. The police found the family's behavior quite alarming and contacted them to conduct a welfare check on Dana. It was clear that they knew something, which led the police to question them again. They were the ones who hired Dana as a nanny. When asked by the police about the situation, they shared that, in Dana's neighborhood, there was a man named Patrick who was installing internet cable. He met Dana unexpectedly and, for a month, kept asking her out on dates. He left poems and notes on her back door, which she ignored. According to the family who hired Dana, she had no interest in Patrick. However, his letters became increasingly alarming and disturbing as he began to stalk her and detail her activities at specific times before her death. Dana even contacted a friend, urging her to ask the police to review her phone records if anything happened to her. She expressed that Patrick's constant phone calls frightened her. The police investigated this information and confirmed that an unknown phone number had called Dana multiple times on the night of her murder. They identified a white construction truck as being involved in the calls, and several witnesses reported seeing a similar vehicle behind Dana's home that evening. The police contacted Patrick's employer, who confirmed the witnesses' accounts. As a result, the police quickly obtained a search warrant for Patrick's home. From the start, Patrick was uncooperative and aggressive, which raised suspicions about him. He seemed reluctant to talk to the police. Initially, Patrick believed that the police were questioning him because Dana had filed a complaint against him. He admitted to stalking her and exhibiting obsessive behavior. However, when he was informed that the police were investigating Dana's murder, his demeanor changed completely. He became frightened, confused, and upset, and began to cooperate with the investigation. He provided his fingerprints and claimed that he had nothing to do with the murder. He also agreed to let the police search his home. Despite his previous objections, during the search, Patrick appeared to be very upset about Dana's death. During the investigation, the police found several letters addressed to a woman that were violent in nature. However, the details and descriptions of this woman did not match Dana. These letters were actually addressed to Patrick's ex-wife and reflected his unresolved anger toward her. Patrick recounted his activities on the night Dana was killed. He said he went to work and then attended a party with friends. Initially, the police doubted his story, but several witnesses confirmed his alibi, making him seem less likely to be the killer. The truck associated with Patrick was investigated and found to be unrelated to a vehicle seen near Dana's house. It belonged to another employee of the same organization. As a result, Patrick was removed from the suspect list. However, the police still had some doubts about him, as there was a possibility that witnesses might have been dishonest. The police then turned their attention to a third suspect. Dana's new boyfriend, Michael, lived in Canada. It was revealed that Michael had a hot temper and was aggressive. Dana confided in a friend that if anything happened to her, the police should investigate Michael. They then decided to go to Canada to talk to him. Michael admitted that there were problems in their relationship on the night of the murder. He had a long phone conversation with Dana, during which she seemed unusually distant and cold. Even ignoring his words at the end of the conversation, this behavior made him extremely angry. Michael later planned to meet Dana in person to discuss their relationship, but he was unable to contact her, and he was not allowed to cross the border. His alibi was confirmed. He was still in another country and did not cross the border, which cleared him of all suspicions. The police soon focused on Dana's niece, Amanda, who left a note in the condolence book after Dana's funeral. In the note, she apologized to Dana for not being a better niece and stated that she was now sober. There was something about the way she wrote that suggested it was a message of remorse to Dana. It was clear that Dana cared deeply for her niece Amanda. She welcomed Amanda and her friends, often inviting them to her home, where Amanda would feed them and sometimes provide money or shelter when they needed it. The police then brought Amanda in for questioning. She mentioned a dangerous person in her group named Blaine, revealing that he had strangled her when she refused his advances. Amanda suspected that something similar might have happened to Dana. Amanda also recalled seeing Blaine with scratches on his arm after Dana's death. Blaine had a history of drug-related offenses. When the police tried to find him, they discovered that he was on probation and had fled the state, making him a wanted man. They eventually found him in Georgia, and the police requested his extradition. Unfortunately, it took time to resolve all the administrative issues, so the police decided to investigate the rest of the group. During this time, a member of their group ended up in jail. The police chose to speak to him directly. He seemed just as suspicious as Blaine, but quickly claimed that his gang was not responsible for Dana's death. He revealed that Emily Launborg, Amanda's best friend, was a frequent visitor to their home. Emily and Amanda were rebellious teenagers who often stayed with Dana. Initially, the police were skeptical of the information they received. They felt that Emily, a short, slender 17-year-old girl, might not have been strong enough to take on a grown woman. However, as they spoke to other members of the group, the investigation took a different direction. They learned from multiple sources that Emily was known for her incredible physical strength, which belied her appearance. Emily had a history of fighting and reckless behavior. Witnesses described an incident in which she overpowered a much larger adult man. Emily's actions were quite violent. She had tortured and killed animals. The teenagers provided the police with crucial information, revealing that Emily's preferred method of strangulation involved placing a person's hands behind their back. This technique closely resembled the position of Dana's body after her death, raising serious concerns for the police. Emily was then questioned by the police. She denied all charges, claiming that her friends had lied and tried to implicate her. However, she was unable to provide an alibi for the time of the murder. A search warrant was issued for Emily's room, where the police discovered some clothing belonging to Dana. It was revealed that Emily had worn one of these blouses to the funeral. Additionally, Emily's diary was found, containing disturbing entries. One entry expressed her desire to kill, indicating her wish to harm someone and escape without facing consequences. In her diary, she wrote that, after an argument with Amanda, she wanted to strangle her, according to Emily's parents. She left the house on the night of the murder, as she often did. Being a rebellious teenager, she announced that she was going to sleep over at a friend's house, which was typical of her behavior, so her parents didn't question her. With all the evidence the police had gathered being circumstantial, they decided to employ a specific tactic. They brought Amanda in for questioning and told her that they were aware of her lies. Without revealing any specifics, this approach proved effective. Amanda, Dana's niece, admitted to Emily's involvement. She revealed that both she and Emily had returned to Dana's house on the night of the murder while under the influence of drugs. They had used various substances throughout the night to the point where they could not recall which ones they had taken. The girls entered the house through an open back door and began rummaging through Dana's belongings in search of money. Dana noticed them and confronted them about their actions. When Dana asked them to leave, Emily became angry and insisted that she would not leave without the money. When Dana refused to give them cash, Emily became enraged and attacked her, strangling her. Amanda was so frightened that she turned away and closed her eyes to avoid witnessing anything. She did not see her friend confront her aunt, but she heard a crack, which she interpreted as a bone breaking, followed by a final gasp that signaled the end of the struggle. After the attack, Amanda and Emily grabbed the two cats and left. Emily attacked Dana, who had cared for her like a mother. In a sudden outburst of violent rage, Emily interpreted Dana's kindness as a sign of weakness and took advantage of it. She was not accustomed to rejection, which made her extremely angry. The police speculated that drugs may have played a role, but others believed that deeper issues were at play. Dana had objected to Emily's friendship with a dangerous person. Having noticed Emily's behavior deteriorating over time, the police did not have strong evidence against Emily. So, they focused on Amanda as their best chance for conviction. They offered Amanda a deal if she testified again before the grand jury. All charges against her would be dropped. Granting her immunity, Amanda accepted the deal. However, the prosecution's case in the Supreme Court remained weak. Emily was eventually offered a plea deal, which she accepted. Admitting her guilt, this allowed her to avoid a harsh sentence. Emily Launborg was later sentenced to 7 years in prison. Emily changed her name and got married. She had 2 children, but later divorced. She is no longer in contact with Amanda. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Lana Clayton. Today, we will discuss a common household medication, eye drops. What a surprise. They have indeed been used as a weapon for murder. Let's begin with the story of Stephen Clayton, a kind-hearted and romantic man who believed in true love. He found great success on his own and was passionate about helping others achieve their goals. Born in South Carolina in 1954, Stephen was a highly motivated individual. By the age of 30, he had established a successful physical therapy business focused on sports injury treatment and rehabilitation. For many years, Stephen lived his dream and achieved remarkable success, earning millions by 1995 and running a large company. After selling his business, he chose to enjoy life and dedicated his free time to teaching and mentoring young entrepreneurs, helping them realize their dreams. Throughout his life, Stephen positively influenced many people, and those he helped felt fortunate to have known him. Stephen was a firm believer in true love and made several attempts to find his soulmate. Despite his past relationships not working out, he remained hopeful of finding the one. His last marriage was to Lana Clayton in 2010. Stephen, who had moved to North Carolina, met Lana online. She was 10 years younger than he was. He quickly became infatuated with her. They got married in November 2013, when Stephen was nearly 60 years old, and Lana, his 7th or 8th wife, after 2 years of marriage. They moved into a luxurious mansion on the shores of Lake Wylie in South Carolina. Designed to resemble George Washington's estate, it was a beautiful, idyllic location surrounded by nature. Stephen had sufficient funds to support this lifestyle even after many years of retirement. Meanwhile, Lana continued to work as a medical professional with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Caring for veterans in various hospitals, her kindness and compassion deepened Stephen's love for her. She was exactly who he wanted by his side for several years. Stephen's family felt very close to Lana, believing that she and Stephen brought each other happiness. With no apparent signs of trouble in their relationship, little is known about what happened later in Stephen and Lana's marriage. But by 2018, Stephen had passed away on July 21. Around 1 p.m., Lana dashed out of their house into the street, stopping a passing motorcyclist in a panic. She told him her husband needed help and urged him to call 911. The man called emergency services and then saw Lana running to a neighbor's house in search of more help, while the man was speaking with the dispatcher, trying to get help to the scene. He noticed that Lana received a text message on her phone. She appeared visibly angry and did not attempt to hide her emotions. Meanwhile, the neighbor went inside the house to check on Stephen, while Lana stayed outside. It seemed that something traumatic had occurred inside. The ambulance finally arrived, and when they entered the house, They saw that Stephen was lying at the bottom of the main staircase under a white sheet, and sadly, it was too late to save him. The paramedics confirmed that Stephen had died, and everything Lana mentioned about her husband's health, along with his appearance, suggested that his death was accidental. She explained that Stephen had been feeling very dizzy and had been sick for the past few days, unable to get out of bed. That morning, although Stephen still felt unwell, when she checked on him around 11 a.m., he was alive and seemed fine later. Lana decided to go outside and mow the lawn, which took her about 2 hours due to its large size. When she returned to the house, she found Stephen lying at the foot of the stairs. Stephen had not been in good health, and given his age, this could explain his death. Looking back, several years earlier, Stephen had gone to the Bahamas to go diving. He ignored several basic safety rules, which led to him becoming severely ill. He changed from very low pressure to very high pressure too quickly, without allowing his body time to adjust, which is crucial. When diving at different depths, Stephen did not take precautions, which led to long-term complications from decompression sickness. He required several months of rehabilitation and was never able to fully recover, despite all attempts to help him. He continued to experience health issues when the police officers spoke with Lana afterward. They quickly concluded that it was a terrible accident, given Stephen's age and previous health problems. They also considered the possibility of a heart attack. However, not everyone at the scene shared this view. Nick French, one of Stephen's nephews and a police officer from a nearby county, rushed to his uncle's home as soon as he heard the news. He noticed details that others overlooked. For instance, Lana had 2 phones in the house and was a nurse. Why didn't she call 911 herself instead? She chose to run into the street to ask a stranger to call for an ambulance, and then went to a neighbor's house for help. When people are under stress, they can sometimes lose their ability to think logically, and this can happen even to those who are well trained. Additionally, Stephen's nephew noticed that the stair runner was not secured in any way. It was completely untouched. If someone, especially someone as tall as Stephen, had fallen down the stairs, the runner would have shifted, but it remained in place. There were also several odd aspects of Lana's behavior that caught Nick's attention right away. She never mentioned that, as a trained nurse, she attempted to revive her husband. The medical examiner said they would take Stephen's body and conduct several tests to determine the exact cause of death and reassure his wife, but Lana was not interested in understanding what had happened to her husband. Her primary concern was to get him to the morgue quickly. Everything about the situation seemed suspicious when someone brought up the investigation into the cause of Stephen's death. Lana appeared very uncomfortable. She started discussing how Stephen had a history of using banned substances and expressed her reluctance to perform an autopsy, fearing it would damage his reputation. However, she quickly added that he wasn't a heavy user. He smoked a little weed and maybe tried some other things occasionally. As she spoke, Lana's demeanor grew increasingly suspicious, especially when Nick suggested contacting Stephen's other nephew, Chris Fagan. Lana strongly opposed this idea, claiming she didn't want Chris to see his uncle in such a condition, believing it would be too difficult for him. However, Chris was an adult and deserved to be informed about what had happened. Nick tried 3 times to persuade Lana to tell Chris, but each time she refused. Ultimately, Nick decided that Chris needed to be informed, and so he would call Chris anyway, while an upset Lana sat on the couch speaking with police officers. Nick went upstairs to make a private call. First, he noticed that Stephen's mobile phone was missing. which was unusual since Stephen always carried it with him. He thought the phone should be lying next to Stephen's bed, on the dresser, or on the bed. But it was nowhere to be seen. Another strange thing Nick noticed was the condition of the room. Although Lana had mentioned that Stephen had been sick in bed for several days, he expected to see a typical mess: tissues, cups, and medicine packaging scattered about, along with the smell of illness. Instead, he was confronted with something entirely different. The bed was completely soaked with urine, indicating that Stephen had been left in deplorable conditions. This was alarming to Nick, especially since Lana, a nurse experienced in caring for veterans, should have ensured her husband was looked after, even if she wasn't sleeping in the same room as him. She could have at least changed the sheets. Investigators believe that Lana intentionally discarded Stephen's phone while he was in bed, preventing him from calling for help. They also think she may have taken his phone several days before his death, since his sister was unable to reach him, which was unusual for him. Chris, Stephen's nephew, whom Lana had wanted to avoid contacting, was eventually informed about the situation. He decided to visit her, to see how she was doing, and to discuss matters in person. And upon his arrival, he brought up the topic of the will. As the heir to Stephen's estate, Chris wanted to locate the will so he could handle his uncle's affairs. However, Lana claimed that Stephen had not created a will. Chris knew this couldn't be true because he had seen the will before. Furthermore, it was hard to believe that Stephen, who was wealthy, intelligent, and 64 years old with health issues, would not have prepared one. The main surprise came when the Clayton family learned that Lana had destroyed Stephen's will. She had started a small fire and burned a stack of legal documents. Lana believed that by doing this, as Stephen's wife, she would automatically inherit his entire estate under South Carolina law, but her actions went further. 2 weeks after Stephen's passing, during his wake, family and friends noticed that Lana had already collected all of his belongings and was trying to give them away at his funeral. She offered his items to relatives, stating that anything they didn't take would be given to outsiders. This behavior raised eyebrows and didn't match what one would expect from a grieving widow. Stephen's nephews were determined not to let their doubts about Lana be ignored. They discreetly contacted the morgue, requested an autopsy and toxicology tests on behalf of the family. All without informing Lana. The forensic toxicologist and medical examiner conducted tests that revealed the true cause of Stephen's death. They discovered that Stephen Clayton had an extremely high level of a chemical commonly found in some eye drops, particularly those used to treat redness. This chemical is designed to constrict blood vessels in the eyes when applied, but when ingested in large amounts, it can depress the central nervous system, cause rapid heart rate, and even result in death. Since this substance is colorless, odorless, and tasteless, it can be consumed unknowingly, making it very dangerous. Even at lower doses, it can cause unpleasant side effects like vomiting and diarrhea, while higher doses can lead to life-threatening situations. With this new information in mind, investigators needed to determine whether Stephen had ingested the eye drops. Therefore, on August 29, 2018, Lana was called in for questioning under the pretext of clarifying some details. At that time, she thought she had avoided suspicion. In reality, the detectives wanted to share their findings and observe her reaction. Although Lana was aware that an autopsy had been performed without her knowledge, she was unaware that FBI agents and personnel from the York County Sheriff's Office were in the next room, listening to her. During the interrogation, Lana initially acted like a grieving widow who had no idea what had happened to her husband, however. When the detectives began discussing the eye drops, she quickly realized their significance, and her behavior shifted dramatically. She seemed to know about the substance and started to weave a complicated story about Stephen. She claimed that her husband had discovered that adding a few drops of the medication to his morning coffee could act as a laxative, which he had been doing due to his bowel issues. This was her explanation for why the substance was found in Stephen's body. There were many other products available that could address this issue. Lana herself was a nurse, and the detectives couldn't understand why Stephen had been doing this for some time. However, Lana soon sensed that they doubted her initial account. So she changed her story. She suddenly began to assert that Stephen had abused her for years. She attempted to persuade the detectives that her husband was a terrible and cruel person who had used illegal substances. The detectives quickly recognized that her claims were false, as they had already reviewed the toxicology report. If Stephen had been using banned substances regularly, it would have been evident in the report. They also looked into her accusations of his cruelty and found no evidence to support them. Ultimately, Lana began to realize she was in a precarious situation. The interrogation concluded with her returning home. Unaware that the investigators were closely monitoring her, apparently, she thought a lot while driving home, because when Lana got home, she sat down with the detectives and told them almost everything. Lana disclosed that after enduring years of abuse from her husband, she finally reached a breaking point. She admitted to pouring an entire bottle of eye drops into his water, claiming she did not intend to kill him, but wanted him to suffer. Her goal was to make him ill for a day or two, so he wouldn't bother her, giving her a chance to escape his constant demands in a shocking twist. Lana also confessed that 2 years prior to Stephen's death, she had called 911. Claiming she accidentally shot him in the back of the head with a crossbow, she explained that she was just loading the crossbow for protection and accidentally shot him while he was sleeping. Surprisingly, the police believed her story of an accident, and Stephen likely supported her claim, thinking his wife would never intentionally harm him. However, on August 29, 2018, Lana confessed that Stephen's death was not an accident and that she had intentionally killed him to stop him from abusing her. The investigators still believed there was more to the story. The circumstances of the crime scene in Stephen's bedroom led detectives to a specific conclusion. It was evident that Lana had been gradually poisoning him over several days to determine how long it would take to kill him. Specifically, while he spent 3 days in bed feeling dizzy, she was experimenting with the right dosage of poison, and on the 3rd day, she succeeded. Additionally, regarding Stephen's missing mobile phone, detectives suspected that Lana had thrown it into Lake Wylie to prevent him from calling for help when he was unable to move in bed. York County Police arrested Lana Clayton after a thorough investigation based on her confession, which took several days to evaluate. During this time, Lana attempted to harm herself by taking pills and turning on the gas in her home. Fortunately, a neighbor checked on her and discovered the situation. She was quickly taken to the hospital and survived. A few days later, she was officially arrested and charged with murder once it became clear that Lana had killed Stephen. His family began to reflect on the past few years of his marriage. Questioning whether Lana had been planning the murder for a long time, they speculated that their move to South Carolina was deliberate. Considering that state law stipulates a spouse inherits everything if their partner dies without a will, they also remembered that Stephen had experienced unexplained health issues intermittently over several months, and even the best doctors could not help him. on January 17, 2020. Lana pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and tampering with food and drugs. She maintains that she did not intend to kill her husband. The prosecutor described the case as one of the worst in York County's history, according to the prosecution. Lana administered eye drops to Stephen over several days at their home on Lake Wylie and ignored him as he was dying, even throwing his phone into the lake to prevent him from calling for help. Authorities suggest her motive was financial, and she even burned a will. Lana's lawyer argued that she had been a victim of lifelong abuse and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, which developed during her marriage to Stephen after a jury deliberated. Lana was sentenced to 25 years in prison without parole. This was a well-thought-out and successfully executed plan on Lana's part. Stephen's relatives confronted the deception of the evil murderer, whom they believed to be not only a good person, but also their friend. Lana deceived not only Stephen, but also his family and friends.